Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the David Saturday Night Sit Back Studio, where tonight I am joined by a powerhouse of a couple, David and Annie Roush. I'm excited for tonight because I believe one of the underlying themes throughout this conversation will be identity. Humans are so much more than our job titles, but how do we articulate and understand who we are? With that in mind, David is an illusionist, a keynote speaker, author, and U.S. Marine. David's speaking topics include the art of turning no's into let's go's so that you can close more deals, different keys to unlocking your dream life, and how to sell your business without selling your soul. David's built his career by solving high-stake problems in UAV technology, aviation, and regulatory strategy. After serving as a Marine Corps meteorologist and oceanographer, he transitioned into aviation and large-scale drone integration. He's trained hundreds of UAV professionals, developed industry-defining drone programs for wildfire suppression, and advised government agencies and Fortune 500 companies on UAV adoption. Annie is a multidisciplinary strategist and creative director who specializes in bringing structure to vision and story to strategy. Her career path has intentionally zigzagged through hospitality management, executive leadership roles, drone piloting, and artistic pursuits. Currently, she manages business comms and creative directions for her husband and long-term collaborator, David. She recently secured a contract to write a memoir for a Holocaust survivor, which she's reimagining as a hybrid art book, blending storytelling with visual documentation. Her work sits at the intersection of systems thinking and creative expression. If you're not sold yet, stick around for about the next 20 minutes. I'd be grateful for you to hear what David, Annie, and I discuss what you could get out of this episode before we dive into their personal stories, which I know will light your internal fire to go on the adventure for yourself to answer that question: who am I and what do I bring to this table of life? With all that being said, David, Annie, thank you guys so much for being here, and welcome to your episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, with that being said, for that last part of the intro, knowing what you guys have gone through in life and what has made you the people you are today, and sort of knowing what we might discuss, why would you encourage the audience to stick around for today's episode?
Because the roller coaster of our life is high time drama. At our expense, of course. The ups and downs, there's some really interesting twists and turns along the way. I think people will enjoy.
Excellent. What about you, Annie?
We have some great stories to tell, and I think people would be very interested in how we've learned how to be functionally homeless and happy and married. So, long story short, I feel like we have a lot of information to share about how to be flexible and adaptable.
Functionally homeless, happy, and married all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be exciting to get into. For
I
sure.
like that order, too.
Yeah.
So, David, I'll throw this first question at you, and
Yeah.
Annie, you'll get 10 or 15 minutes to think on it. So I'm putting you in the hot seat, and you'll have some time to consider. Let's say we looked at life as a book, and every day in our life was a page of that story. What do you think is one of the more important pages that we would need to know about to understand the context of who you are today?
That is a great question. Well, I suppose one of the most important, I break it up into sections, like chapters, where there's the chapter when I was a Marine, in the Marine Corps. There's a chapter when I was flying. There's the chapter when I started, my businesses, and they kind of overlap at some point, but it's usually about a 5-year progression between those. I would say and you can edit however much you need to. If I go into something that we shouldn't be talking about or might be too much for the audience, you can take care of that.
We can talk about anything we want. It's the nice thing about podcasting. No major networks to report to here.
That's true.
Yeah.
The defining moment for my life was when I was 14. My parents we were homeschooled, and we were moved to a small town in Ohio, Logan, Ohio. And we were there for about 5 years or so. And completely isolated, relationship troubles. We're growing up. We're not the greatest kids, kids are getting in trouble. And this is back in the 90s, so we're outside and, playing with sticks like we don't do much anymore. But it all kind of fell apart. And I ended up going to juvenile detention for assault and attempted murder of my dad, who was. So what happened was we'd been delivering newspaper routes. We had 11 newspaper routes. We were delivering newspapers as a family. My mom and my brothers, and my dad was a dishwasher at Red Lobster, and we started. We were fighting every night, and when I went to. Sorry. I haven't talked about this in a while. I went to a place I bought a knife with some of my birthday money. And I was outside, I was chopping stuff down, like boys do. And my dad comes home and he's yelling, and I just snapped. I had enough of it. And he wanted me to give him the knife. I said no. And so he tried to take it from me, and I blacked out. And I woke up, I was on top of him with the knife, and I had this image in my head, if you will, that if I do this, if I go through with this, I will never amount to the person I want to become. I will never become a Marine. I will never become a pilot. I knew those were the things that I wanted to do because that was what my granddad did. And I spent the weekend in juvie, and I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted from my life. I had my dad on one hand, who was a dishwasher and didn't really know how to run a family. And of course I didn't know that back then, but it was evident in that this wasn't working and this wasn't what I wanted. And I had my granddad, who was married to, his name was is Deloyd. He's still alive. He turned 102 in March.
Wow.
Yeah. He's still sharp as a tack, still talking about, technology and stuffy, space and aviation. And I had that example. I had my dad's example. And I knew I wanted to be more like my granddad. So when I was in juvie, that's when I started writing my first book. At the time, it was called Deathbed Lifestyle. And what I did was I looked at my life at the end on my deathbed, and I looked at my life and I figured out what I would regret not having in that life. And being a Marine was one of those things. So I knew I had to take the path that would get me to the Marine Corps. I had to graduate high school. I had to, I had to focus. I had to get away from the toxicity, at least long enough to get where I could learn discipline and how to be an adult. So I decided on the things that I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to live in Japan. And I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I hit 30. And I've achieved 3 of the 4. I don't know how to be a millionaire yet. We're still figuring that one out. I don't think it was a great goal. Of course, I was 14, so those were great goals for me because I didn't know. Yeah. But that was the single most impactful moment in the trajectory of my life and what I chose to do with my life, because I didn't have options. I didn't have money. I didn't come from a place that was, like we have everything in Austin. We're out in the middle of nowhere, disconnected from society, from people, just trying to survive. And then, all of my high school, we were just trying to make it, just trying to, I was working 3 jobs. I wasn't really involved in a lot of school, and I had no real connections with a lot of the students that, that were at school because, they had normal lives.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what that was like, but I knew what I wanted. And that launched me on my trajectory.
When you say that you guys were sort of in the middle of nowhere, where was the closest neighbor? Are we talking like miles, the next half a mile down the road? Like how secluded was the home that you grew up in?
Well, it wasn't. We had neighbors on both sides.
Okay.
We didn't really talk to them. It was a very small town. Logan's a very small, run-down town in southeast Ohio in the Hocking Hills. So, you go to the further away from the bigger cities, you have smaller and smaller towns, and we just didn't interact with anybody. So we were isolated among ourselves, and because we were homeschooled, we didn't have any means to really interact with other people in the.
Do you remember, did you ever ask your parents or learn why they decided to go the homeschooling route versus public, private, or any of the other options that are available?
Yeah. And I had a great education. So the homeschooling route, my mom is really intelligent, and she taught us really well. And what she didn't want was for us to be raised in the system that which the job of the system is to make us fit into a gear. We need to become a gear, and then we need to fit in with other gears so that we can make the system run. And she didn't want that for us. She wanted us to be able to think for ourselves. And so we grew up learning logic and Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. The Bible. We were raised on the Bible. Probably a little too much. Went a little on the deep end. And that's, I think, where everything kind of spiraled out of control. But the homeschooling part was great. And it was just the rest of it that kind of poisoned the well, if you will.
Yeah. How many siblings did you have?
I have 3. I have a younger brother, and I have 2 older brothers.
Okay, cool. That's one thing we'll probably learn a lot about each other since we've only spent about 30 minutes on the phone so far. But you and me have that in common. I was homeschooled as well. I was in a private Christian school pre through 2nd grade, homeschooled 3rd through 7th, back in a Christian private school 8th through my junior year. And the high school was just such a miserable experience. 200 students. Everyone knows everyone's business. I was the weirdo in school. I was just begging my parents, like, please let me go to any other school. And finally, my senior year, they let me go to a public high school, which was about 3,000 students. So talk about a cultural shock. But it was funny because I got more integrated with a really tight-knit, good circle of friends in that 8 months my senior year than I ever did at the accumulative 8 years at the private school. Because, I mean, I guess it's a numbers game, right? If there's more people, there's higher chances that you find your people and your sense of community. Whereas if there's only 200, it's sort of like, well, you got the 60 people in your class to work with, and that's about it.
And they know everything.
Yeah.
That's is very similar. I ended up going to the I was not well disciplined myself. Very extroverted, so I didn't do my homework, and I ended up a year behind. I'm like, well, how am I ever going to graduate? I need to graduate. I can't go for the GED, or I can't go to the Marine Corps. I could, go to the Army, but I wanted to be the best.
To the best of your memory, before that night or weekend that you were in juvie, do you remember if you had any goals or visions for your future, or were you sort of more focused on the here and now, which a lot of us teens probably were? But do you remember that being a pivotal night, of the night that you started really looking forward to the future and what you had ahead of you?
I did have those goals, and I did fly for my first time when I was 10. I went out to a small airport with my dad and my brothers, and there was a guy there with a little yellow Piper Cub. I don't know if you've ever seen one, but it's that iconic trainer airplane that's really small, a high wing. It was the most incredible feeling, your first time in a small plane, because I don't know how much space there is between you and thousands of feet,
Right.
but it's not much. And when you're 10, you're still learning about life and everything. But even now, if you're in that situation, that's your first time, is just a thrill. And I knew I wanted to be a pilot. I knew I wanted to do cool, fun things like that. I knew I wanted to be a Marine, but I never really sat down and made that choice, or made the connection with reality that I'm not going to make it if I don't have a plan, if I don't have a goal, and if I don't get my work done that I need to get done. I'm not going to make it, because as a kid you think, oh, I want to be an astronaut. Well, yeah, you got to do stuff to be an astronaut, right?
Yeah.
And some of that stuff has to start when you're young. When you're in high school, you have to pass, you have to graduate, you have to do all that stuff. And it kind of hit me when I was there that I was not on the right trajectory to make it.
Did you tell anyone about your goals that you had made? Like, did you express them to your mom or your siblings, or was it sort of just something between you and your journal that you had kept to yourself for a little bit of time?
I don't know how much I revealed to them shortly after, but I know I did. My mom helped me get through high school. She's the one that got me to private school. So I went to a alternative school, public school, and then private school. So she really wanted me to succeed, obviously. And then my younger brother, another moment that came from that was that my older brother and I, the two middle brothers, we're really close. But Nathan, he ended up taking that path, and we started getting into more serious offenses, like throwing rocks at cars and vandalism and things like that turned into more. And after the juvie incident, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to break off that relationship and just cut that cord. I knew it would turn into a fight, like a fight that's lasted, ever since. And that conversation, I remember having that with my younger brother, because I wanted him to see that there was an option for success, that my oldest brother kind of gave up on life and he just plays video games and works at McDonald's, and he's the oldest. And then that's Jonathan. And then Nathan, he went off the deep end, and he went to the Army to avoid, I don't know how much I should get into his stuff, but he went off the deep end into doing bad things. And then I had those examples, and I had Steven, who's the youngest. And I'm like, I've got to step up then. And I've got to figure out my goals. And I think that first year is where it really kind of, I started telling people what I was going to do. I was going to invest in real estate. I was going to be a Marine. I was going to be a pilot. I was going to do all these things, and here's how I'm going to do it. And I've been doing that ever since, too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, did you see a pretty quick change in yourself after you got out of juvie?
Maybe not for the better. I think that first year after, I was very rebellious. I was very angry. For all of high school, I was angry. Then I joined the Marines, so that didn't help at all. So I think gradually over time, I'm going to be honest, that I don't think I understood how to be a human until I got married, which is kind of weird to say. But I did not know what happiness was until I tried Molly for the first time. Okay. And that's really weird, but I didn't I never felt that. I never felt that feeling of being happy or being content or being, where I need to be. And it's just I've just been fighting my whole life. Everybody, fighting the world, fighting my family, and then we fight, of course. But it's different, right? Because now it's constructive fighting, and I can relive those moments when I was a child and look at some of those fights, and we can grow from that. And it's I've only been stable for about the past 3 years or so. But what did happen was I did see a growth in my discipline as I really started putting my mind to doing my homework, and then once I could see that I was achieving the goals and getting my grades up, and I really started to believe that I could do that I could make it.
Did you ever get any like glimpses of happiness that wanted you to have more of it, even if it was just for a fleeting moment when you were doing something with your brothers or with some friends that you did have? Do you remember if you had those small moments where it's like, that was nice. I want more of this. I want to chase this, or was it pretty tough goings and up until your first time with Molly and then getting married?
I think there were. I remember a couple, and I think a lot of them just got suppressed. I remember one moment. My mom was taking me to school. So this would have been my sophomore year because I was at public school. And she was taking me to school, and I had this feeling of, like, I really wanted to put behind everything that happened and just get to know her and connect, and I just shut it down. I'm like, I'm not going to give any satisfaction or put myself out there and be vulnerable. And I think I probably made that choice a lot with any moments where it would come up that I could be happy, and it would conflict with either what I wanted to do with my life, where I don't want to get distracted by girls, or I don't want to get distracted by I don't want to get distracted from my goals by feeling happy. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the Marine Corps kind of exacerbated that. College exacerbated that. But I did have a lot of moments in college that I loved. I loved meeting new people and doing going on adventures and hanging out with friends. Those were great.
Yeah.
But I think they're a little bit different because I'm throwing parties and I'm buying a house and I'm going to school, so I'm still like achieving my goals, and I still couldn't let anything get in the way of that, except for myself, of course.
Yeah.
Because I did that. But I started a bunch of companies while I was in college. I was flying airplanes. I started my real estate empire when I was in college, and it all kind of fell apart while I was in college too. So even where I was enjoying my time, I was still stressed to the max. I was still pushing myself farther than I should have, doing things that I should have waited on. But also knowing that since I didn't come from anywhere where I had any of these resources, I had to figure it out. I had to find them. I had to learn. And I figured it'd be better if I used my 20s to beat my head against the wall. It'd be better than trying to do it in my 30s or 40s or later.
Yeah.
So I kind of just decided to do stuff as much as I could and treat it as experiments. So if it fell apart, then that's fine, because I'll learn from it and I'll grow from it. And the faster I can fail, the sooner I can succeed. But I had to fail first or I thought I had to fail first to get success, but I don't know if I believe that anymore.
Was your dad still in the picture throughout the rest of your high school years?
Not really. No.
Not really.
No, we visited him occasionally and whatnot, but we were busy in school and my mom right afterwards my mom left and took us with her, and we were at an abandoned women's shelter for 6 months, I think it was, and then we got a place, and from then on it was just trying to get money to put food on the table and trying to her trying to get us to focus and me do my homework.
Yeah.
And so there really wasn't a whole lot of time for anything else.
And did you guys stay in Ohio during that time, or
Mhm.
did you? Okay.
Yeah, so we moved from Logan to Lancaster, which is about 40 minutes away.
Okay. And then after high school, did you go to the Marines first, or did you go right to college first?
Straight into the Marine Corps.
And how many years did you serve for?
5.
5.
Yeah.
Any? I know I've had a few military folks on the show, and so I know sometimes it's some stuff you got to keep confidential, other stuff you don't. If you had to shed some light on how that experience was, what did it do for you? I guess let's start there.
Yeah. Everything. It was
great answer.
It was an entire lifetime shoved into 5 years.
Yeah.
And there's really no other way to say it, because the stuff that I did, I look at now and I can't believe some of the things that happened. Like, mind you, I'm like 18, 19 years old on the other side of the globe.
Right.
And I'm on the I was attached to recon for a while, reconnaissance, badass, they go in, get stuff, never seen ghosts, like these guys, lock picks, no doors a door. The human intelligence guys were incredible. Those guys, like, they could talk to anybody at any time and get pretty much whatever they wanted from that person.
Yeah.
And so much so that they would play games with it. I'm like, how do you do that? I want to know. And so, that's my mentality when I was out there. All the best times and the worst times were in the Marine Corps. But I'm in South Korea doing a frozen beach report to get some guys onto some beaches and back safely, and the colonel's like, hey, or not, he didn't say that.
Howdy, partner. Can you do me a favor?
He's like, I need this report ASAP. Yes, sir. And he wanted me to find all the unfrozen beaches in the middle of January in Korea. Where do I start? But turns out that, depending on the shallowness or depth of the beach and how much salt content there is in the water, if it's deeper or shallower, there's less salt content versus more. So some trigonometry and some common sense and a lot of hoping that this works, made a report and sent it, and 3 days later, because nobody came back to me and said anything, why would they? And 3 days later he comes back, he's like, good job, that worked.
Cool.
I'm like, I can do stuff. That's crazy. And I'm a kid. This is the first time I've really been away from home. The first time I was really away from home was when I got on the bus to go to Paris Island. So
what would you say is I love going back to how you described it earlier, that each of your life is sort of in chapters. You almost had one life up until you were in 18, then lived a whole nother life for about 5 years. What do you think was the biggest difference between the David who went into the Marines and the David who came out of the Marines?
The David that went in was skinny. The very skinny. I got an award for most changed in my senior year of high school because I went from knowing nothing about how to lift to being able to lift 90 pounds, which is great.
Yeah.
So I got an award for that. Most improved, which is awesome when you have zero baseline.
Yeah.
So that was good. And I was obsessed with learning more. I was obsessed with growing. I was obsessed with the gym. All of those things I didn't have really have a lot of access to before I went in. So the person I was when I went in was skinny and weak and very religious, and tenacious. The word tenacious has actually followed me my entire life, so I'll use that as the baseline for my personality. That never changed. I just came out with a lot more skills, and probably even more tenacious, because when you achieve something that you don't know if it's possible for you to achieve, you can't stay there. And I think a lot of the Marines that I served with, I mean, we were all a mixed bag, right? But I think a lot of them, because of their behavior, were more interested in paying attention to the moment that they're in. While I was trying to learn, or I was learning about investing in real estate and, going diving and not drinking, which was the big one, that ostracized me from my unit because that's all they wanted to do was drink. Drink and work out. Okay, I got the workout part, but they say you become one of three things when you go to Okinawa. You become an alcoholic, a gym rat, or a Bible thumper. And I was all three. But most were just the first two. And I say that because I didn't really drink much. I didn't drink at all. And then I got into drinking because I was in the Marine Corps. And I had to face those things, like, is drinking a sin? Is, how far does practical weigh in on what should be, And I came out with a lot of those answers. I know where I'm going when I die. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not going to be an alcoholic the rest of my life. I know how to control my addictions, and I know when alcohol is good and when it's bad, and not that I always practiced that until I stopped drinking, which was another thing. That when you achieve things, you know that you can achieve things, and so you can't stay there. And I think a lot of people get stuck in achieving that first thing, and thinking that that's all that they can do, or that's all they're capable of. But when you go from nothing really, and then you make something of yourself, you can't believe that lie anymore. And so it made me even more tenacious, because I wouldn't accept from people the notion that, like, for instance, getting out of the Marine Corps, like, well, it's really hard on the outside, you're never going to make it. Like, well, give me a shot, like,
Let me go and find out.
Let me go and find that out. Yeah. And whether I do or not, that's kind of the point, right? I've made it this far. I'd have people telling me I wanted to do special forces, mostly because people told me I could never make it. And whether somebody's telling you should do something that they want you to do, or whether they're telling you can't do something, either one of those, if you choose either one as your decision making choice reason, you're still doing what they want you to do. And and that was one of those moments when I was getting out, when I was looking at what I wanted to be and who I wanted to become, because I was Obama's drawdown took out a third of the military, and so I wasn't eligible to do the things that I wanted to do in the Marine Corps. I wanted to be a Marine Corps fighter pilot, and there's a long story I'd like to get into later about why I was eligible for for even going that route. But even with a lot of assistance that I had, I wasn't able to stay in and do the things that I wanted to do. So I'm like, do I want to do recon? Do I want to do MARSOC? Do I want to do, whatever? And I was leaning towards MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command, because people said that I couldn't do it. And then it hit me. I'm like, I want to be a pilot. Why am I even here? Why am I doing this? Why am I even trying to do something that I don't even want to do? So that's why I ended up getting out, because I wanted to go find out on my own what I was actually capable of, and not what other people said I was capable of or said I had to do.
And did you go to college as soon as you got out?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go?
Yeah. Liberty University.
What state is that in?
That is in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah. I was there for 4 years. So I went residential. I went to the commercial corporate aviation route.
And when was your first real estate investment?
That would have been in so I got out in 2014. So that would have been 2015.
What was it?
It was a 6-bed, 2-bath on an acre, about 5 minutes from the school. I spent a lot of time looking at properties for my first one, and I wanted to do it right. I was I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, Millionaire Next Door,
Yep.
tons of books, and that's what I was doing when I was in the Marine Corps. I was studying and learning and growing, and then I had the VA home loan, which I ended up not using. I went for the FHA loan instead for a different reason, but I wanted to learn as much as I could, and there came a point when I knew too much, that the rest of it I had to learn through experience.
Yeah.
And I was knowledge saturated, and I could recite it in my sleep, and I would just annoy the shit out of people with all my whiteboard drawings of how you're going to buy a house and you're going to buy another house, and it's like a bucket, and you got to fill up the bucket a little bit, right? And the rent payments fill up the bucket, and then you take it out and you get another one, and you daisy chain properties. And I just draw those out, and I'm just constantly like making new things, and people liked it, but I think it was way over a lot of people's heads. So I'm like, I just need to do this.
Yeah.
I need to actually do it and stop talking about it. So I spent about a year looking at properties, probably went to 60 or so different properties, working on a checklist and making sure that I didn't forget anything. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of resources, and certainly not resources I could afford. So I made my own company around it, and made my own checklist, and kind of just took my knowledge and tried to turn it into a system, but didn't really know what I was doing, except that I knew where I was trying to go. What I mean by that is I didn't exactly know how to do what I was doing, but I know what I didn't want. So I was very picky. And I knew for the first one, it had to have a solid foundation. It had to have, or for all of them. Let's be real. Maybe if you have 10, you can kind of afford to have a slack off, property. But no, you're not going to be, you need a strategy at least. And so I found this. The location was great. There was parking. The foundation was great. There were a lot of rooms. There's a lot of space, it took a while to find, but it was very solid.
And when was the first? Did you feel like you built a good sense of community while you were in the Marines? Did you make some friends while you were in there, or when was sort of the first time that you felt like you had a good sense of community encircled around you?
I think I had a pretty solid community in the Marine Corps. I found my community at a place called the Hanson Christian Center and Koza Baptist Church. So, like I said, I went the Bible thumper route, and that kept me out of a lot of the alcohol stuff, but it also gave me access to a vehicle. I had this big green van.
Yes.
It was huge. It was like 13 seats or something. And not seats, it was like benches.
Right.
This thing was huge. And I would take people to and from church because, I had my gold card then, which was like you're allowed to drive a car, and I had my white gear license, so I could drive military vehicles, Okinawa. I could drive civilian vehicles, and being that I was going to church, I was allowed to get all that, which was really cool. But the car came from church so that I could go and schlep people from different bases and take them to church.
Yeah.
And I was able to use that to go diving. We went dove the Nimitz. Went deep sea diving. Went deep sea fishing with tuna. We went to a bunch of different islands. There was one island that was inhabited entirely by white rabbits. That's it, just rabbits. And that one particular island, we get there, and there's a sign, and it's in Japanese, and I didn't know Japanese at the time, and we all ignored it because none of us could read it. Turns out the sign said it's like no trespassing, JASDAF, Japanese Self-Defense Force, training grounds. And that's what the white rabbits were. That they brought white rabbits out to this island because they breed really fast for hunting purposes. So here we are on their military hunting grounds, just looking for white rabbits, and that was fun. But that was the kind of stuff that I was doing, and I had a great community surrounding all that. A lot of divers, a lot of interesting people, a lot of Japanese friends, really good people that kind of showed me that what the community should look like. And that's the interesting thing too with where I grew up religiously speaking, but being here where you don't say you're a Christian unless you actually mean it is a completely different world than American Christianity, which I think I'm going to probably get shot for this, but I think American Christianity is the worst religion. It's the worst thing to ever happen to the world, because let's say there's a religion that's, whatever, it's not fake, it's not hurting anybody, or it's not like legitimate, it's not hurting anybody. But you have a religion where the people believe that they have the answer to the future, to your soul, to eternity. And and they wear that like a badge of I'm cool. And you have to follow these rules and stuff, and you have to keep within yourselves, and anybody who's outside of that doesn't look like you or is real, a genuine person, that doesn't fit the facade that is created around this religion. And I think if you profess to have the truth and know what the truth is, I think it's a shame if you're covering that up by a false face. And counter that with being in Japan, where 2% of the population is other, right? There's Buddhist and then there's other, which is 2%. And talking to people who've never heard the name of Jesus was very different than trying to defend myself at all turns from people who are just attacking me for it. But speaking to people who are like, who is this? You don't know, you've never heard the name? They've never heard the name. And then you have to start from the very beginning. It's like, oh, I believe that, there's evidence Jesus died on the cross and, for your sins. And I've never had to go back this far before.
Yeah.
How do I start?
How did, to the best that you recall, if you can recall like one particular conversation, how did they react to that? Was it almost just like, if you take what's happening right here, for example, right?
Yeah.
I know very little about you. So was it almost just like telling the story like you've been telling me, and they just sort of soaked it all in? But what was that? Because I agree with you. It's second nature for me, right? Like I've read the Bible cover to cover, and whether I believe it or not, like if we could sit here and have a 2-hour conversation about the Bible if we wanted to, what was that experience like trying to explain this concept of Christianity to someone who had no idea who Jesus even was?
It was eye-opening, because it's kind of like when you do something you've done for so long that you've forgotten how it started for you or how your mind changed around a certain thing and why, right? Like for me, magic is that way because I'm on the other side of the curtain. I will always be on the other side of the curtain. I know how mechanics work. If you dig deep enough, you will figure out all of the mechanics for just about everything. And it's disheartening because you can't feel that again in that way. At least you'll never feel that. At least I'll never feel that with magic per se. But I can experience that through other people. Right? I can experience that first moment when somebody sees something that I've done 1,000 times, and I have to remind myself that they haven't seen it 1,000 times. So it's new for them, and they're like, "Oh my God, what?" Like, "Oh yeah, this is cool." You know? And it was kind of like that moment. It's like, "Oh my God, what?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, she's like, "What?" And you know, doesn't speak English, and I'm trying to learn Japanese, and so I have Japanese friends, and one of my friends, Candy Sampson, who is just, I don't know, more extroverted than me, like times 10. And you know, she has all these friends in the jazz staff, Japanese Self-Defense Force, and outside of that. And so, you know, I'm hanging out with them, and we're talking and trying to get through that language barrier and talking about, you know, our experiences, and very limited communication skills on Japanese communication skills on my part, but just enough to be able to explain what we were doing at Coast Baptist and why people should come to Coast Baptist. You know, because for us, it was our community, and it was, and we were their community too. So they wanted to know what we're involved in, and of course, well, this is where we all originated from, at least to their perspective. And so then you have to explain what a Baptist church is. It's like, oh, it's a church. Oh, you know, then you go back to the very beginning. It's Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and you know, to save us so that we can have eternal life with him, and that just floors them, because there's this thing with all of us that we're searching for truth. And the first time that happened to me, you know, the lady was like, "What? I didn't even know that was, you know, that was a thing." I'm like, "Yeah, that's we need to sit down, and we've got 66 books to go through. This is gonna be a while."
Yeah. Hey, thank goodness some of them are quite short. So
Yeah.
You got that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is just that eye-opening moment for her that this was even a thing. You know, on that takes away some of the ancestor worship and the anxiety that comes around not knowing where you're going, or worshiping something that you know in your soul isn't correct. And I think when people hear the gospel for the first time who've never heard it before, it kind of just does hit you in the face. You know, it's like, whoa, why does that make sense to me? And for me, the first time that happened was when I was out in I was 7, and I was we were coming back from the park, and I like to, like, you know, sit in the grass and pick flowers, and, you know, just stare at the bugs and see how long you can stare at the ground and see all the things that start to move. The longer you stare, the more things move. It gets really weird. You should try that. You go outside, and you just sit in the grass and you just stare at it long enough, and your skin will start to crawl. But just seeing things like this entire world that we're a part of and we don't even interact with that much. How deep does that go? How big does space go? You know, how small is it? Infinitely small? Is it infinitely big? We have no idea. At least to us, as far as human beings, we probably could never actually reach the extent of the universe, or the smallest thing that there is. And people keep finding more. Scientists keep finding more. They're so behind. They just keep trying to, you know, catch up. Yeah. And that fascinated me, because we were studying Greek mythology, and you have all these gods, this pantheon, Greek, Roman, you know, Viking, these gods, and they're just being silly to me. Like if you're running around sleeping with all these humans, and I know that's stupid, why would I ever worship you? Why would I ever consider you as anything more than me? I'm 7. Of course, that is stupid to a 7-year-old, you know. But then I hear about God, who's infinite, and who created the entire universe and spoke it into existence, and He has this plan, and I hear about Jesus, and he came down and He loves everybody like infinitely, and He has you know. I'm like, that makes sense to me. That if I'm an artist and I'm drawing a picture of a human being and I'm 7, I might think that's really cool until I place it against a picture, the David statue,
Right.
if you will.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. Have you ever seen it? Like
In pictures. I've never seen it in real life.
Like if you can't touch it, but if you
I
could.
a good example I could give you, I went to New York for the first time about a month ago, and we went to the Met, and they had a whole section of different statues, and the architecture was phenomenal. So I haven't seen David, but very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like the fabric is sculpted from stone. It's like,
right.
Holy shit! How do you do that today? 3D printing? I don't know. And it doesn't breathe. It doesn't move. It doesn't think. It doesn't, it's not alive. And so, you look at these scales of things that you've made, and you look at a car and you think somebody had to have made that. And you look at a tree and you think, well, somebody had to have made that. And to me, it's the odds of evolution ever creating something where you're perfectly aligned in a solar system to not fry or freeze, right? Or a tree, an orange tree is always an orange tree, and an apple tree is always an apple tree. And if you look at evolution, everything goes towards entropy, everything, which means there's no possible way in all of time, no matter how long you stretch it out, or all of logic, or all of physics, that any of this could have happened by chance. And that's articulated by a 34-year-old, but a 7-year-old can also see that and think, well, this tree is really cool. And then you hear about God, who, Jesus, who created that tree and has that attention to detail and loves every one of us. And that made a lot more sense than anything else I'd ever heard. Yeah. So for me, that was that moment where I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna go that way. And so I got to feel that again in Japan. Haven't felt that again in the U.S. And but that moment, like being professing my faith and not in a place where it wasn't cool or statusy to have faith, is when you really find out what you truly believe. I think, and you really get to experience that with other people, and that's just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, that's cool. Would this be a good spot to put Annie in the hot seat for a few minutes?
Have you had some time to think about?
You might have to repeat the question, because that was a pretty deep question, and I've been listening pretty intently to David and not really thinking about myself. So.
Could we take a bathroom break?
I was just going to say, this is the perfect spot to refill drinks, use the bathroom. I need to use the bathroom too, so yeah, let's take a 5-minute.
Perfect.
Well, welcome back. We took a short bathroom break, everyone, and David and Annie are trying Zims for the first time. Hopefully I don't get you guys addicted. So Annie, to pose the question to you, we'll dive into your story a little bit now. If life was a book and each day was a page, is there any particular page that jumps out in mind that adds a lot of context to who you are today?
I think that when I married David, I woke up, in a sense, and I think that's probably the strongest, most defining moment of my life up to this point. because then I started to figure out who I really was as a person. Like, not that I didn't have ambitions and I wasn't excited about my future and things, but I didn't really start wanting to live my life until I was with the right person. And I think that was my biggest goal growing up, was just to find the right person. And I was like, and then my life can really start, which sounds kind of weird, but I always had that innate desire to build something with someone and to have a shared goal set. So I think I spent a lot of my time daydreaming about that moment. And now that that's already happened, it's like, okay, who have I always been? Who am I now? And who am I going to be? Right. So, it was a really, should I tell the story then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Could I just establish a base real quick?
Sure.
I know home for you was Ohio. What about yourself? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born, convoluted. I was born in Houston, and we stayed there until I was 3 years old. And as I understand it, my dad, he had a brother. His whole family was mostly in Montana. And if you've never been to Montana, I highly recommend it because it's gorgeous and amazing and absolutely pristine. But he had a construction business, and we went out there to help him with his construction business. And during that interim, we lived with his parents for a little while, and then we had a house in Belgrade, Montana, which is just outside of Bozeman, literally with mountains in my backyard, right? So a lot of my childhood was just being outside and enjoying the moment. I really connected with nature early on. And I think that's always been a big part of my personality because of that, because I've always been like a country girl until now.
Did you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister.
Nice. And were you guys close? Are you close?
We were close. We have since had kind of a falling out, and that's kind of a complicated story. And I would like to repair that relationship, but it's contingent upon us coming to an understanding instead of right now it sits at a disagreement about certain things, and there's very little communication there that I think is healthy to sustain a good relationship at the moment. But I fully expect for us to eventually come back around and revisit it once things kind of cool down and the dust settles, more or less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was the bulk of your childhood post 3 years old spent in Montana?
So we stayed in Montana for a few years, and we ended up having to move to Nebraska. Yes. We ended up moving to Nebraska for financial reasons, and stayed with my mom's sister until we kind of got on our feet and got our own house in Valley, Nebraska, which is just outside of Omaha. And so I spent the bulk of my adolescence in the Omaha area figuring out how to navigate social relationships, more or less. Because that's been a thematic throughout my lifetime is figuring out where I fit in, who I am, and who I am in respect to my social groups. So, Nebraska was very trying for us financially as well, and that has been something that has, overarched my entire lifespan up to this point, is my relationship with money, and it's been rough because when you come from nothing, you have to build an infrastructure in your mind whereby, okay, how am I going to achieve my goals? My number one goal being I want to establish wealth for myself to create a legacy for a family going forward. And how do you do that when you have a poor relationship with money? So
True.
that has been a big part of our journey up to this point.
Yeah.
But in Nebraska, it was very difficult for us and to go to school and have the social pressures of fitting in and not feeling like you fit in because, well, you know how kids are. Like, if you have more money and, you look better, you have more resources and things, people are going to see that you have status and they're going to accept you more, and et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like a lot of that time in Nebraska I spent in public school, which I wish I would have been homeschooled, because public school for me was not a great experience. And I spent most of my time in school trying to escape from school through art and music and creative pursuits. And that was like my little house that I stayed in, you know. That was where I felt like I really shined, and I felt like I really got a lot of recognition, wherein before, like just in the normal classroom, I was known as the nerdy one that knew too many words. And one time I got the comment, "What, do you read a dictionary before you go to bed?" I was like, well, shouldn't you read a dictionary before you go to bed? Or an encyclopedia? Like, isn't that a good thing? You know, how's that an insult? Thank you.
Yeah.
You know? So, and my family life was really kind of dysfunctional because we didn't have money. And there was all the stuff going on at school. And so we were all just kind of trying to learn how to be a functional, healthy, loving family together while under all of this pressure all the time. And, you know, that integrates in with moving around a lot. And we had to move around a lot because of reasons, you know, circumstantial stuff. But we had a decent amount of stability when we found the farm in Valley. And we got an opportunity to live in a place for, you know, about 10 or 12 years. And once again, I returned to my roots, literally, where I reconnected with nature, and I was outside a lot. And I used to pretend that I was an Indian princess, like a Navajo princess, and like pick plants and combine them, and you know, that was medicine and all this other really cool stuff that
Something caught her attention.
Yes, Coco? Can we help you? Anyway,
And gremlin noises.
she had something to say about that. Where was I?
Pretending to be a princess,
Yes.
making the medicines.
Yes. That was my escape into my own little world, into my head, because unlike David, I am a lot more introverted. I'm a lot more I don't want to say self-reflective as in he doesn't reflect on himself, but I'm just more reserved, you know, and it takes a lot to bring me out of my shell. I'm very shy. So when I experience things that are, you know, adversities, then I tend to retreat back in, right? So my formative years were me just trying to figure out what it was that I even wanted to do with my life. I've always had so many interests that it's been very difficult for me to decide what it is that I even want, right?
Yeah.
So high school was me figuring out that I really loved art and really loved to be creative, but didn't know what direction I wanted to take that, right? And so when we moved from Nebraska, I just graduated high school, And that is when we moved to Michigan. So we picked up all of our stuff and we moved to Michigan, partially because my dad was, he grew up in Montana, and he was a wilderness guy. And I think that his family was the last official pioneers of an era. Like, they didn't have, when he was living in the Yak River Valley, they didn't have running water, and they didn't have a proper bathroom, and they had to hunt and fish and stuff and can. And so he was not attuned to city life, as it were. Like, that was not his place. So he didn't care for where we were living, and he wanted to find a place that was more his speed. So we moved to northern Michigan, and that is very isolated if you've never been there before. Oh man, it's right in the middle of the woods. It's just woods nonstop. And he found a house in Hillman, Michigan, of all places, and it was just this little decrepit, like, terrible house, and he basically rebuilt it from the ground up. And it didn't take him very long. It took him maybe like 5 years or something like that. And I think that was very inspirational for me, because I was always interested in knowing how to do as many things as I possibly can learn to be self-sufficient. And that's a big part of Michigan culture too, is hunting, fishing, canning, permaculture, which is something I'm very interested in. And so that developed over time into me really becoming interested in holistic care and optimization, more or less. And being out in the middle of the country for so many years, I feel like from the culture shift from where I was in Valley, being surrounded by people who were often toxic and drinking too much, and I ended up going to an isolated place where people were drinking too much, and
Same problem.
yeah, same problem.
Different setting.
Yeah, different setting, less people. Once you get integrated with people who don't have a direction or a purpose with their life, and they're trying to get away from something in Michigan. They're not going towards something a lot of times. And that is very consistent with a lot of the people that I know there. So that's fun. So anyway.
Spice of life.
Are we still in sort of the high school era at this time?
This is right after I left high school. We moved to Michigan. Like, literally just graduated high school, picked up, and went to Michigan.
And then that's where I met her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what, 17 years?
Yeah. I moved there in 2007, which was August of 2007, which was a couple of months after I graduated. So still in that high school mindset of where am I going, what am I doing, et cetera, et cetera. I ended up taking a break from any sort of schooling at all. And I wanted to go to art school. But when I pursued that, I realized that it was $60,000 a year for me to go to art school. And I was like, well, that's not practical, right?
Yeah.
And by this time in my life, I'm trying to blend practicality with what I want to be doing, because those were two separate ideas for me at that point, right? Excuse me. Because I grew up in the system. I grew up in public schooling, and I drank the Kool-Aid, more or less. I believed that the only way that I could be successful was to get a degree and to have someone recruit me and for a job, et cetera, et cetera. And there was no concept of the personal branding notion that we have today, where you can just have a laptop and, go wherever you want and do whatever you want, more or less,
Write a memoir.
and write a memoir or whatever it is that you're doing. The digital nomad thing was still foreign to everyone at that time. And so I ended up going to business school because I realized that everyone needs business training. Everyone needs that. That's kind of a no-brainer, and if you're going to participate in the economy, you have to know how business works, right? So I went to business school, and ironically, my conflicting desire to succeed in something and my desire to be accepted really colored my decisions. And I ended up partying too much and getting into too much trouble, even though the reason I chose the school that I chose was to stay out of trouble, right? I still found the trouble, right? Because I hadn't grown up yet, you know? So I finished my degree in business administration management. And shortly thereafter, I married my first husband, and that only lasted 9 months or so before we broke up. And like I said before, I'd been looking for the right person. That was like my goal, was to find the right person. And I was in love with the idea of love, right? So I married the wrong person because I had all of these ideas about what love was supposed to be, and it wasn't that. Yeah. At least not in that relationship, right? So.
Could I interrupt you for a quick second?
Sure.
To give you context for this question, I forget if I told either of you on the phone, but 65% of the audience is almost an even split of men and women 24 years of age or younger, which is pretty cool. So knowing who is listening to this episode, before you married that individual, was there any like red or yellow flags that in hindsight you were like, man, I should have seen that this wasn't going to work out? Or was there anything like that in hindsight?
Yes, there was. There was a couple of instances, like he didn't really fit in with my family as well as I thought. And he distracted me in a lot of ways from my faith, which is very important to me, right? And, you know, we as human beings don't always execute what our top priorities, what we know our top priorities should be. And yet our, I don't know what to call it, our shadow selves, darker selves, maybe just want to run rampant, just kind of do whatever we want and nobody can tell me and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So he distracted me from that, and he was kind of just a difficult individual. He was I don't know how to explain it really. He was
He's no longer in the picture.
He's no longer in the picture for a good reason. He was argumentative is a good way to put it nicely.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So 9 months that ended, and then sorry, I knew I was going to sidetrack you a little bit. I apologize, but
No worries.
I wanted to give that to the to any young women that were maybe and young men, anyone who's thinking about marriage and they think they know what love is, and maybe they jump into something either too quickly or blindly, or I love how you worded it. That was perfect. You sort of allow your shadow self to run rampant.
Yeah, it did.
Good quote.
Yes, thank you. So I think it was just that we weren't mature enough. Could it have worked out? Potentially, but I don't think in the state that we were in spiritually or mentally or emotionally that it was just not going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned both music and art were of interest to you. Do you sing or play anything, or was it more of listening to music was something that was really beautiful and just a way for you to, music's a powerful thing, and I was curious if you were involved in music or if it was more of finding music that moved you and motivated you that you could sort of get lost in.
Well, I started playing music in 5th grade because that was mandatory, where they give you the recorder and they're like, here, learn these songs, yada yada, and then when it came time for middle school, I was asked if I wanted to join the band, and if I wanted to join the band, what instrument would I want to play? I was like, okay, well, I guess I want to try the clarinet since I'm pretty good at this recorder thing, you know? And so I gave that a shot, and I ended up enjoying the clarinet and being a part of the ensemble, marching band and symphony and things to that effect. Being a part of what really got me about music was being a part of the music, like being immersed in it, rather than just sitting there and listening to the music. You can be a part of it, and that really blew my mind. And I still remember some of that feeling of just that swell of sound all around you, and it's just so, what's the word? I don't want to say dramatic, but just, like I said, immersive. It's an immersive experience to be a part of. But I think what really unlocked that love of music for me was singing, when I realized that I kind of had a natural talent for it. And I really enjoyed the mechanics of learning how to project my voice and how to pronounce things properly while you're singing, and how to enunciate, and just the general progression of growth in that, and how it connects to, I guess, my dad's side of the family. They've always been artistic, creative types with natural talents in art and music, and I picked that up really quickly, and I really started to build a sense of identity around that, and learning that I appreciate patterns and rhythms, and I can pick up things easily if it has some kind of a tune to it. Like, still to this day, I nickname things like Crazy, and I think that might have something to do with that musical talent or skill, perhaps. Or maybe I'm just attuned into, well, like I said, that was distracting for me because I'm super sensitive to audio, right? And sounds. And it's really easy for me to get overstimulated. So I think that music was a way for me to, like, calm the chaos a little bit internally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think your superpower is?
Oof. Oh, my superpower. My superpower is naming things, coming up with words for things. Wouldn't you say, David?
I would say you have a few, but that's one that, like, Coco has like 30 names. I don't know. It must be something with your bard background.
My bard background.
Your bard
Yeah,
background.
that's another one. Is I'm really good at remembering words,
Yeah.
like pusillanimous.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
pusillanimous
What's
means
that one mean?
very weak in conviction. Yes, very weak-willed and weak in conviction. And it just fell out of my mouth the other day when we were having a conversation with our friend Matt, and we were talking about the current state of, wokeism and things, and I said a bunch of pusillanimous infants.
We're all like,
and
what?
Matt and David are like, okay.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Pusillanimous infants.
Pusillanimous infants. And I was like, I have no idea why I know what that word means. But my dad did explain to me that our ancestors were bards in Ireland. So it was the bard's job to tell stories, to carry the history of the Irish people inside of their minds, and they didn't have it written down. They just relied on the bards. And apparently, according to him, I haven't done a ton of research on this, but it was a capital crime to touch a bard. Like, you could be killed if you lay a hand on one of the bards because their job was so important. And yeah, so
That explains a lot.
yeah. So that would be my two superpowers: naming things and remembering words that I don't even know the definitions to.
Yeah.
Like those. Do you feel like with where you're at now, your introvertedness has served you in some ways?
It has made me very careful with how I spend my energy. I'm very jealous about how I spend my energy and my time, and very careful with what I take in. Because I have to be especially observant of my surroundings and the people that I surround myself with. Because being a people pleaser, that was one of my biggest issues in the high school era, was just wanting to be accepted and not caring about who I was accepted by. Yeah. So.
Do you have any, if you meet someone new, do you have any kind of sixth sense or gut reaction that sort of leads you to, this is someone who could be a friend, a colleague, a business partner, versus this is someone who does not need to be in my circle?
It really depends on how expressive the person is. Like, they could be as reserved as I am and difficult to read. It takes me a little bit of time. It takes me more time to figure out how to navigate a relationship than it does, I would say, David, actually. David has a quicker perception to those types of things, because he's trained himself, and I'm more of a natural in that respect, I guess. And B, because I just was not as discerning about who I spent my time around until I learned to be that way.
Have you ever heard of a book called The Gift of Fear that was written by a gentleman named Gavin D. Becker by chance?
I have not.
In one of the chapters, he's talking about how if you take a wolf who walks up to a steel cage and there's another wolf in it, and the cage is surrounded, on the top, bottom, left, right, and behind, and there's just the one entrance in and out. It's soundproof. There's no windows. And they sense that the animal that's already in there is dangerous. The wolf that's approaching that steel cage will more than likely not get into that cage with that other animal.
Oh.
And the analogy he gave was, why is it that as human beings, if a person is walking up to an elevator and there's a person that's already in the elevator and there's something going off in your head or your gut that says this person's trouble, we're so quick to not want to offend that person by saying, I'm going to go ahead and wait for the next elevator or turn the other direction, and we'll still get into that steel box with that other human being. And I thought that was a really interesting analogy that I can't get out of my head, because I'm like, we humans we're funny creatures, how sometimes that very quiet alarm will be going off, but we don't want to cause offense before we would potentially put ourselves in a dangerous situation. It's a great book if you ever want to get into someone else's head about listening to your intuition in both in a good way, and really learning that your gut often is pointing you in the right direction, but for some reason we want to quiet our gut for one reason or another.
Right.
What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So I've read this book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm not sure if you've heard of that one, but it talks about your gut reaction. As soon as you meet someone, you know if you want them to be in your life immediately, and yet a lot of us just ignore that. And so we go ahead and we interact and engage with those people consciously, we're just trying to make a friend, but subconsciously we're working against ourselves, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I read his other book, Talking with Strangers,
Mm-hmm.
and that one was really good.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with him.
Very insightful.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a little bit of a game changer for me, actually.
Is that one you'd recommend?
I do.
I might pick that one up next. I
I
have
do.
2 that I'm almost done with, and then I'll be ready to add 2 or 3 more to the mix.
Yeah.
So
It does talk about how your snap judgments are usually correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your subconscious is the majority of who you are, and your conscious mind is more of a director. Its job is to help you identify things around you that your subconscious can use. So your subconscious is the majority of who you are, and within the first couple seconds of meeting somebody, your subconscious has already figured out stuff you can't even see.
yeah.
And that's what it talks about. It's like you have to hone that part because it's not on the forefront.
Yeah.
It's underneath, and we try to cover it up with I think as a culture and a society, we put too much emphasis on not offending people, like you said, and we care more about that than we do care about about truth or about our who we want to become and what we want to do, and we try to surround ourselves with people because we're social creatures.
Yeah.
And so that social orientation is so overwhelmingly powerful that we decide to shut down common sense and good judgment to appease our own feelings that the other person doesn't necessarily have.
Yeah.
Which I found is very apparent with the reaction to COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of people just suck that up without ever thinking through the consequences of just absorbing what people tell you to do, or people tell you what is right and what's wrong. And rather than thinking about it, it's a lot easier to just go with it and then shut down our higher brain function that is telling us there's something not right about this. And we're both watching The Pianist. I don't know if you've seen that before.
No.
It's about it's a movie about the Holocaust with what's his name?
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody. It's fantastic.
It is.
What struck me was how many people were complicit in the Holocaust. Jews, Germans, Polish, like how many were complicit. You don't get where they got without people like us. And there's this phrase that evil wins when good men do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Not when good men fight back, but when good men do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between a good man and a weak man. And I think a lot of society puts a lot of emphasis on men who have no ability to be extremely violent when they need to be. And they call that good. But a good person is someone who's capable of extreme things, that knows how to control those. And we've lost that plot. We've lost that plot on life. We've had that for eons, like we're hunters.
Yeah.
We think our way around elephants and dinosaurs and and apex predators and we think our way around that and we've grown to where we are because of that ability, and we've grown to the point where we're now shutting that down, that the people who can think for themselves and challenge people's notions on what's right or wrong, those are the bad guys, because they're forcing us to think. And I think that shutting down that the subconscious tell of whether you want to be with or around somebody comes from the desire to not rock the boat and to not have to think, to not have to be responsible for those thoughts, to not have to be responsible for the choices that we make. It's a lot easier to just do what everybody else tells us to do.
Yeah.
Which is the trap I fell into. It's what everybody thinks that I should be doing. And that leads me to when I met David. It was a very violent clashing of wills at first. because I'm quiet and reserved, but I still have a very strong personality, and I'm very opinionated. And, I was unwilling to give up on certain things, like faith was like my number one. And I told David, right away, I was like, this is the most important thing, or I want it to be the most important thing in my life. So if you are going to distract me from that, then this is not going to be a relationship. And he's been consistently supportive of that, and helped me grow in my spiritual life and my emotional maturity and all sorts of areas. And he was the person that woke me up to the fact that I was just being complacent in my own life. So at the time that we had met, I had been selling insurance for Aflac in northern Michigan during COVID, which
And she was good at
I
it.
made a go of it, though.
She did. Like, she was successful.
I was somehow successful at that, being introverted and scared of everything, basically. Because I've always had that certain willpower to, if I know something isn't right in my spirit, I will do something drastic to push myself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
It may take me some time to do that, but I eventually will get to that point where I'm like, I can't take it anymore,
Yeah.
So, but, David has been instrumental in helping push that boundary forward more, and because he's so versed in social dynamics, he's been basically coaching me in social dynamics and still does to this day. So I have all these questions for him, and I'm like, am I doing this right, or da-da-da-da-da? And he's like, yeah, you're doing good. You're doing great. And he's wonderful. Or sometimes not so great. You could improve on this, this, and this. And then sometimes it's just like a knockdown, drag-out thing, where egos clash, but things are learned, which I think is the important part, is when you take those really difficult moments and you turn it into a lesson.
Yeah, you're going to fight with people, and it's very important that you do, because especially when you're married, you're growing together and you're making up for each other's vulnerabilities, and I hate that idea, that notion that you want to marry somebody who doesn't want you to change. People like, don't make me, I don't want to, I don't want to marry somebody who wants me to change. Or I don't want to date somebody who wants me to change. I always thought that was insane.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be with somebody, you're going to change one way or another, and you want to be with somebody who's going to make you, who's going to push you, who's going to clash with you, and find the nuggets of truth about who you are and who you are together, to live a successful life, to live the life that you want to live, not just the life that you're told to live or that other people want you to live. And so we fight, we fight, not a whole lot, but when we do, they can get pretty gnarly. But we fight about our direction, and we fight about the people that we want to become. So at the end, in those fights, of course, there's like egos and stuff that get in the way, and we have to apologize, for whatever our part was when we realized we were being stupid. But the majority of our arguments are about who we want to become as people. And since we're both on the same wavelength of growing and developing, I want her to do that. I want her to fight me. I want her to challenge me. If I'm not holding up my end of the bargain with, she's a better cook than me. She's more into health than I am, and I thought I was really good, right? I go to the gym, I work out, I'm all about health and eating and protein and a balanced diet and all this stuff, I was not as good as I thought I was. There's I think you mentioned earlier the ego lift. Oh no, that's Dan Coe. Never mind.
I may have said that when I was talking about me and my workout buddy. Yeah, right before
you did.
recording,
Yeah.
I mentioned we try not to be the.
Oh, ego lifting.
That's what the ego lifting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you did say that, and I thought that's an interesting way to put it. Is that a lot of my early and it did serve me. It served me really well.
Yeah.
In the Marine Corps, and I'd work out for 3 hours a day. I did 16 different styles of martial arts. I did weightlift, Olympic training, boxing, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Aikido jiu-jitsu, and I'd spend 3 hours a day working out. And then I find out after I get married and go through that process of reevaluating how I wanted to be physically fit, that I was, those pre-workouts aren't healthy for you. Drinking 6 cups of coffee a day is not healthy for you.
What?
I mean,
I'm kidding.
I know, right? It wasn't 6, but maybe 3 or 4, or just being at a coffee shop all day and working on homework or working on work stuff because we're very mobile. You just drink more coffee than you should, and then you get anxious, and we wonder why we have an anxiety problem when we consume so much sugar and caffeine. We need to cover it up with alcohol, because that's got to switch over, and so when I'm not on, when I'm not being healthy and I'm fighting that, I want her to call me out on my bullshit. And same with me. I'm going to call her out when she's not performing to the best of her ability, obviously with grace. Obviously there's rest involved and stuff like that, but you can't see what you can't see when you're just you. Which sounds like a Dr. Seuss quote.
Yes, it does.
One of my buddies told me once that the reason it's good to have a spouse, therapist, accountability partner, whatever word is because we can only see what's ahead of us, but someone that's looking at us can see above us, below us, to our left and our right, and what's coming up behind us. And I loved his way of wording that.
That's
true. Awesome. Yeah. Like that.
Can I also change part of my answer for my superpower?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. One of my other superpowers is creating environments, creating harmonious environments. I'm very aesthetically driven. If you didn't notice, I was walking around your apartment looking at all of your artwork and smelling your candles and looking at all of your neat little doodads and what have yous. I'm like, oh, there's a little Minecraft thing over there and da-da-da-da-da. So I pay very close attention to the lighting, to the sound environment, and I'm very adept at interior design. That's one of the first things that I notice when I walk into a room is how does it flow? What are the colors like? What are the smells? That's a big one, is smell.
Yeah.
Huge. Because when you walk into a place and it smells bad, you're like, I don't want to be here. Why would I? What? Weird.
And me coming from the Marine Corps, I could sleep on a rock,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't need things. She's like, yes, you do.
You do need things. Things are not to like a materialistic sense, not to where you're superficial, but your environment does matter, and science supports that too. One of my big things is I can't stand clutter. Hate clutter because it interferes with me mentally. It interferes with my workflow and productivity if things are messy. If I sit down to work and my house is all gross, I can't concentrate. I can't concentrate on it. I have to do this and I have to do that, and that's been kind of a bone of contention between he and I before.
Well, I'd always go to coffee shops and just, I can't work at home. Or couldn't work at home because I would get distracted by all the dust in the corners and the dog and everything else. And so I'd always just, my house is, very minimal, and then I go to coffee shops to drink a shit ton of coffee, and and eat food and do my work. And so now we're building it differently to where the environment is also part of that flow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, I would say so. So we've been working on we've been working mostly toward combining our two strengths in a way that just flows
Yeah.
rather than clashes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he has a different approach to things than I do, and I would prefer that my house environment be my work environment. You know, have like a little compartment like this, sequestered. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yep.
Have a little enclave where I can do my work from. But I want to be able to work out from home. I want to be able to work from home. I want to be able to eat at home. I just want a little self-contained unit because I'm all about self-optimization in that sense. I
Yeah.
want to be sustainable.
Yeah.
So,
My older sister lives in downtown Manhattan right now, and I went to visit her
Oh.
last month, and
Tell her I'm sorry.
she I felt the same way when I saw her place, but she's living in like a true studio right now where you walk through the front door and it's a little hallway that leads to a rectangle. And so one wall is the kitchen, one wall is the bedroom, one wall is the office,
Oh,
and then
wow.
the other wall is sort of storage where she has her dresser and the nightstand and a few boxes of things that she didn't want to leave behind, and but she also didn't really have anywhere to put them. And talk about optimized living. You know,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
really maxed out what you can do with a little 350 or 400 square foot
Yeah.
rectangle.
mhm.
For me, it was not the life. You know, this is about as small as I can get, and this works. I'm very comfortable here.
Mhm.
You know, having a second room one day to put the podcast in, so I could actually get my dining room back,
Yeah.
and have a
Mhm.
kitchen table here, and have a few friends over to eat dinner and play board games would be amazing.
Mhm.
But for where I'm at in life right now, like this is great, but yeah, the New York life is not is
Yeah.
I'm not built for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I hear it. I hear
That
you.
is admirable, and I really appreciate people that can do that, and that's one of the reasons why just before I met David, actually, I was selling all of my things, my worldly possessions, and in the process of becoming a digital van life nomad. That's what my goal was right before I met David, and then God had other plans
Yeah.
for me at that time, to the point where I became certified to teach English as a foreign language, and I was going to move to South Korea, or I was looking at South Korea, Spain, um, Japan, and a couple other countries. And I don't know if you're familiar with that process, but there are companies that will pay you, obviously they'll pay you, and then they will provide you with living situation, and they'll provide you with a stipend for expenses and things to that effect. And you can just, that's what you do. You just teach English to people in a different country and get to experience a different culture. And hi, Thad. You get to experience a different culture, something that you're just not used to, and something that can open up your mind.
Open your mind.
Open your mind.
Well, hopefully this isn't jumping the gun, but because I know we have a few things we wanted to touch on. One thing I was really curious about, what's the story between when you guys met and when you became functionally homeless and happy?
Oh,
I
Yeah.
think is how you worded it earlier.
Right.
Okay.
Um,
You tell your side. I'll tell mine.
okay. This should be fun. So we met on Hinge, on the dating app Hinge. And the reason why we met, because neither one of us were interested in dating at the time, and I'll let David tell his side, but I was over the opposite sex after having been married and having, dated quite a few men that just didn't meet my standards by one measure or another. And it took a lot of convincing on the part of my friends and my family to look into dating again. And I remember having a conversation with my sister, and she was like, what could it possibly hurt just to meet people, you know? And because I was in northern Michigan, the pickings are kind of slim there, you know? And I knew the kind of person that I wanted to be with. So I figured that the best way to meet that type of person would be online, because it wasn't going to be in the middle of nowhere, right? And so we ended up matching on Hinge. And 4 days later, like, we started FaceTiming almost immediately. The conversation flowed so well, and we had such chemistry that I was, like, skeptical. You know, like, this is suspicious.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with this guy? Because this is going too well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we started FaceTiming, and
A lot of things, turns out.
a lot of things. And we started FaceTiming, and we were on a FaceTime call when he had just left Michigan, and he was now in Chicago, January 8th, 7th or 8th of 2021. And he's FaceTiming me, and his friend shows up in the background, like right behind his face, and he goes, are you coming to the party? Because it was David's birthday. He was having a birthday party for David. And let me reiterate, I was in northern Michigan at the time.
Yep.
He was in Chicago.
Yep.
Okay. I drove to Chicago 7 hours to meet him for the first time.
Huh.
Yeah. That's how much of an intuitive sense I had, to where I risked my life horribly. And it was a very dumb decision, but it turned out to be totally worth the risk.
Yeah.
So when I showed up in Chicago, his friend was out getting supplies, I guess. We can get alcohol mostly. And
I like supplies.
and David opens the door, and I'm like, huh, well, this is not really what I was expecting. David was not, like, in my type wheelhouse. I don't know. I never dated somebody who was a ginger, first of all. I never dated someone who was a magician, second of all. And the reason why he even got me interested in to begin with was he had this video on his Hinge profile of, he pulled a Corona bottle cap out of his phone and said it was a solution to COVID.
Corona.
Corona.
Virus.
Corona bottle cap, COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's funny.
It is funny.
So magic is the reason we ended up talking at all. And when I first saw him in person, like, it was kind of like a reveal at a show. You know what I mean? It's like, kind of just had this sense, like, this is the person that I'm going to spend my life with. I don't know how I know that, but I know that. Just meeting face to face for the first time. And we ended up spending the whole weekend in Chicago at this place called the London House, which is a really super nice hotel. Like, really nice, like $500-600 a night. Nice. And because it was during COVID, it was severely discounted rates, like $100 a night.
Nice.
And David was on this contract, which we found out later his boss had been embezzling from the company. And he lost a ton of money on that contract. And he only had a couple $100 in his bank account. And he took the risk anyway, and he paid for the hotel room. And I think that's one of the reasons why we ended up staying together.
She actually coined it the London House principle, which is, if you have very little money or resources and there's something you want to do, just do it, because your resources will come back.
Yeah.
And that opportunity may never come back.
It's true.
So you just take the risk.
Yep. So we did. We took the risk. And we got the full Chicago experience. Chicago dogs. Have you ever had a Chicago dog?
I don't know how realistic it was, but I stopped in Chicago once in the airport, and there was one stand that said something like authentic or realistic. I forget the word they used. But they put a couple different vegetables I wasn't used to. Whether it was authentic or not, I will say it was a delicious dog.
That sounds like the right description.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what's on here, but this is amazing.
it's like so good.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Anyway, I've made them multiple times in commemoration of that weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we spent the weekend in Chicago. We did the full Chicago experience with the Chicago dogs and the bean and walking around the city, and it was insanely cold and windy. So I was like, oh, Windy City, got that. Okay. we got harassed by homeless people. That was really fun. And we walked around the hotel in bathrobes because we could, because they came with a room.
man.
And we went to the rooftop bar. He was wearing a bathrobe and combat boots, and I was wearing a bathrobe and slippers. And we just show up at this super fancy restaurant where everyone is dressed to the nines, and we're just like, hey guys, how's it going? You know.
Happy pandemic.
You should have seen their faces where it's a mix of I want to be them so bad, and also how dare they come in here with bathrobes.
So rude.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
It was hilarious.
It was. And so that kind of set the precedent for our relationship of just doing things. Yes. Can I help you? Doing things in our own way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at our own speed.
Yeah.
And to fast forward a little bit, I ended up joining the company as a facilitations director. At the time, Airy Collective was involved with manufacturing swarm drones for the Air Force. And so sharks are born swimming, right?
Yep.
So I just dove right in, and I started working on government grant writing projects right away. And my big vision for the company was to digitize all of its assets and turn all of David's knowledge into a digital product, which is where we are finally executing right now. And it's taken a really long time for us to unravel all of those things. And amidst all of that chaos of trying to transition the company between one focus to another, we did this is where the functionally homeless thing comes in. We traveled the country back and forth between California and Michigan 7 times together. And during that time, we were pitching venture capitalists on our swarming drone platform for intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance. That's how the product started. And we pivoted to fire mitigation in California because of the Paradise Camp Fire.
Yeah.
So we did that for, I think, a year and a half, maybe, or so, until we had a meeting with Adam Draper. Are you familiar with Adam Draper or the
Sounds
Drapers?
so familiar. Remind me, please. I'm sorry.
Tim Draper is one of the founders of Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And his son fell into that industry as well. And he funds projects that are deep tech, is what it's called, which is technology, but a level higher, a higher level of understanding, and more in line with the 6th wave of technology. So things that people just that laymen are just not familiar with, like military and law enforcement and things to that effect. So
He wanted to make a real life Iron Man suit.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
you need a lot of new technologies to kind of make all of that work.
Yeah.
So that's what Adam Draper was investing in. And so when we pitched him on our platform, we thought it was a shoo-in. We just thought it was a no-brainer, and we were going to hit it out of the park. Well, his response to our pitch was, "What are you guys, a drone studio?" And that just totally floored us. We're like, this is your livelihood. This is your business, and this is how you basically identify yourself professionally? How do you not know what swarming drones are? So it was very difficult even to explain to people who were involved in that industry. And that's when we both realized that they're just not going to fund it at all because they want super high returns, and they were mostly funding software rather than hardware because they were all sold out to China, because China is the one that has all the drone hardware that's, it's the best in the world, and at the lowest cost of production. So we're both like, okay, clearly manufacturing isn't the right way to go. And speaking of Adam Draper, as we were having this realization, we were staying in his building in San Mateo, Draper University, which is this Pepto-Bismol pink building in San Mateo. And it's this big warehouse where people rent office space, and they work on these types of projects like hydrogen tech and 3D printing, or additive manufacturing as it's known. And, super convoluted, complicated projects. And we were basically living in that building. And we had a Planet Fitness membership. That was Rachel's idea, which was a really good idea, by the way. His friend Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
She was like, so you guys are trying to, kind of travel and be stable. Well, why don't you get a gym membership? That way you can continue to, work on your fitness, and you can also make sure that you always get a shower, and et cetera, et cetera. And, we're basically living out of the truck at that time. So we spent a lot of time at Planet Fitness. We spent a lot of time in San Mateo. And Starbucks is awesome, by the way. Starbucks is amazing. Because Starbucks never threw us out. They never said, oh, you can't use the bathroom, because this was during COVID still. Yeah. The 2021-ish transitional period. So we gained all of these little resources for ourselves. Planet Fitness, Starbucks, and Panda were our three main ways that we were able to find some sort of normalcy and stability amongst all the craziness of having to move back and forth all the time. So, yeah.
Wow.
It's been a trip. It's been a ride.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my side of that was after flying for a little bit, I had a really bad breakup, and I had my company fell apart, and all that stuff ended up happening at the same time, and I didn't finish my degree at Liberty University. But I was flying, and I was thinking to myself, is this it? Am I just going to upgrade cockpits and go a little further to, from a regional to a major, and then retire from United as a number? Or did I want something else? Because achieving things makes you want to achieve more things, because you know that you can. And I read an article that China had signed a contract with Dubai to make them the first smart city by 2030 using drone taxis. Essentially, by 2030, Dubai will be the one to achieve the world of the Jetsons that we're promised for a really long time. And that's an option. The advanced air mobility industry is real. It's a real industry. And it blew me away how many industries drones impacted. They touch everything. They revolutionize just about everything that they touch. And so I'm like, I want to be a part of building the future of aviation, and not being a cog in the machine of the current aviation that isn't going to be. Let's say it takes 50 years to get drone taxis. Maybe I spend my 50 years building that future rather than spending 50 years living in the past. And at that time, a major contract had come out. So I started Area Collective and jumped in, just straight up jumped in. And the Paradise campfires hit in 2018, killed 84 people, and wiped the town of Paradise off the map. turned paradise into hell, essentially, literally. And Pacific Gas and Electric was fined $2.6 billion, or almost $3 billion, for negligence, which they were found guilty on. They were found guilty on all charges, and it wasn't their first one. The year before, they blew up, killed 8 people, blew up a neighborhood with a faulty gas pipeline. And every year after that, when they're on probation, they failed their probationary period. Too big to fail, you know. One of those, man. It's the corruption went deep. Yeah, but the judge ordered them to inspect all of their assets before the next fire season. And this was end of 2018. They have over 700,000 assets, and they cover a third of California. To inspect over 700,000 assets before the next fire season, which is in May, is impossible. A third of those assets had never been inspected since they were put in the mid-1800s. Like never. Because the only way to do it is with a helicopter or with a person. Right? A helicopter has to fly up. It's really expensive. You've got all these assets up on mountains and down in valleys. And a lot of them are really hard to get to. So that was the largest commercial drone operation in history, with 1,000 pilots covering a third of California, and we inspected them by August. I don't know what those numbers are for efficiency, but that's insane. That's off the charts. It's never been done before. So I went out to California for, we didn't even have the contract yet. I was brought on by a company called Precision Hawk. I'm in San Diego when COVID hits. No. I'm in San Diego, and then I get a contract with a company called Intelligent Energy out of Loughborough, England.
Yes.
Building hydrogen infrastructure in the U.S. At the time, there were 45 hydrogen stations in the U.S. There were like 40 of them in California, and like 42 in California, and 3 on the East Coast. Like something ridiculous. And we built a hydrogen fuel cell quadcopter that could fly for 3 hours rather than the traditional 30 to 40 minutes. And that was kind of my big break. I was in some publications, and I was doing a lot of work with a lot of different organizations to further the green energy movement of, well, hydrogen's water, so it's our most common resource. And so eventually hydrogen as a fuel source will become the cheapest and the most efficient fuel source, because it's water and we have a lot of it. And that was going well, and then COVID hit out of nowhere, and I was in San Francisco at the time. So probably the worst place to be. I was in England, and I had just got back from England a week before everything shut down. And that's when I saw the true face of a lot of the people in California. And I was also a toxic hot mess. So I fit right in. And I say that because my first month in San Francisco, I went on 200 dates.
In 1 month.
In 1 month. Jumping back a little bit to when I started the company and went on this journey, I had a very bad breakup with a girl who accused me of things that didn't happen, but because of Title IX, I didn't have a voice. It was no contact, restraining order, all of it, and without my side of the story. And dealing with at the time, the company was falling apart. We had 4 partners in the real estate company. We had 4 partners in the real estate company, and one of them, who's the program manager partner, wanted to take the company for the rest of the properties. So I'm dealing with that, and I'm also dealing with the city because of the city ordinances that weren't being followed by that same individual. So I've got the city, and I've got, they're both coming after the company, and I take over the company as a CEO. At the time, I was the chief marketing officer. But the guy who funded the company wanted out of it, so I took over the reins of the company and restructured it to make a lot more sense. Never have equal partners, ever, especially 5. Somebody's got to take responsibility. Somebody's got to have the authority. There has to be a chain of command. You can't have a business otherwise. And so then this happens. We hadn't even been dating at the time. This was in December, and she broke up with me right before Christmas. And I had just moved out of my house and rented it out to a tenant, and moved into this new place. I was all by myself, and my company was falling apart, and my life was falling apart around me, and I was failing my degree. And for the first time in my life, I felt suicidal. And I just did not want to wake up the next day, because my peace was when I was asleep. And so I attempted once, and then spring semester rolls around, and I'm getting hit by these panic attacks every time I go on campus, because just being there was stressful, just knowing that she was on campus. And then I get this, I have one of my instructors call me up to the front after the class, and he tells me that I was requested to go to this meeting with the Title IX people. And they asked me some questions. I brought one of my friends with me, and they completely disregarded everything that I said. And essentially did say that because she was working for them, that they were going with her story because she was an employee. And everybody knew that was garbage, but what are you going to do? And so I had a second moment where I was very unstable, and I couldn't even drive, because I couldn't trust myself not to just drive into oncoming traffic or off a bridge or something. And I attempted a second time, and I felt so bad afterwards because of the way that I attempted. It took me several days to recover. I thought to myself that if I tried it a third time, I would figure it out, because there were a couple things that stopped me. I was drunk. That cleaned out my system. I don't know how much you want to air of this, but I won't go into details. But I knew that if I tried a third time, I'd probably succeed. And I couldn't allow that to happen. And I had to look at the number one problem, which at that point in my life was I didn't understand how to engage with the opposite sex. And I was extroverted, so I had a lot of friends, and I had girlfriends, but I was still sheltered. I didn't date until I was 21, and I was in a long-term relationship for 4 years, 3 of them overseas while I was in Japan. And so that was pretty steady. That was different. But I didn't know how to get what I wanted out of life. I didn't know how to communicate with the people that I wanted to talk to. And I just kind of let life happen to me. Even though I was still tracking this, really solid path, I'm like, I don't apply that logic to anything else. If I want to learn how to fly an airplane, I go to school to fly an airplane. You learn how to do the things you want to do. Why is this any different? I learned how to drive a car. I learned how to fly an airplane. I learned how to shoot a gun. I learned how to go to the gym. I learned how to do all those things until I'm good at them, because if I do them poorly, I could hurt myself or worse, kill myself. Mm-hmm. If I don't know how to handle a gun, I could hurt myself or kill myself. If I don't know how to fly an airplane, well, you don't want to be in the right seat with me, Right. So I go for years, and I work and I study and I think and I apply, my higher brain function to solving those problems. Yet for some reason, applying the higher brain function to this was tabooed. Why couldn't you think your way out of this problem? So I decided to face the whole opposite sex problem the same way I faced everything else, and to learn how to achieve the result that I wanted, which was to be good with women. So I started studying Erich von Markovic, mystery, and Neil Strauss, who wrote the book The Game. There was a TV show back in the 90s on VH1 called The Pickup Artist, and that was crushed by the feminist movement, as it should be, because what they're doing is they're taking techniques that are valid and they're teaching people how to look like a man of value and trick the feminine psychology into accepting somebody who didn't have that depth. What I had was the opposite problem, where I had the depth and I had no idea how to communicate that. I didn't know how to market myself worth shit. And I had a dating coach, and he asked me what I did, and I'm like, I'm flying airplanes and I'm doing, flying drones and building drone technology. And he said, tell me what you do. I'm like, well, I do drones and I have a company. And he's like, what? Stop. You have the most interesting story I've ever heard, and you make it sound boring. Oh, try it again and put some enthusiasm behind it, And I'm like, oh. So then I start putting these pieces together, like enthusiasm and being able to approach people. Like, oh, you can do that. You can just talk to strangers. You can do that. Like, that's crazy. And I was dating a girl at the time who wanted me to move to New York, and I am like, hey, I like this girl, and she wants me to move to New York, and I don't want to. And he said, well, then don't. Okay. He's like, where do you want to go? San Francisco. Then go to San Francisco. Stop trying to think of ways that you can appease a woman, and start thinking about what you want out of life, and then bring somebody into that. Right? Do what you want to do, and you'll find the people that are doing the things you want to do. So I said, okay. I went to San Francisco. And that's when all that stuff kind of started hitting. Right after the breakup, I met a guy. His name's Dryden Glod. He was a professional magician for about 8 years, and the way he could manage a crowd, and started traveling all over the country doing shows. And one of the ones that we went to Ohio, and we go to this. We finish the show and we go to Texas Roadhouse at like 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. They're about to close, and there's always 2 or 3 girls at the front. And they're like college aged. And I'm like, so what are you guys doing? We just came from a magic show. And they're like, you do magic? And they got all giggly and can you do some magic for us? And we're like, well, yeah, but let's get some food first. So we've been doing this all night. And so we sit down maybe 5 minutes, and we see them popping their heads around the corner, and they're like, are they done yet? Are they done yet? Are they done yet? And so, all right, come on over. And the entire kitchen leaves and comes over to the table. And of course, all the customers are like, what the hell is going on in Texas Roadhouse tonight? This wasn't the holiday or anything interesting, or anything, special like that. So it's very, very interesting. And so he started performing, and the customers came over, and within about 10 minutes of walking into the door, the entire room was just surrounding our little table and just having this moment in a Texas Roadhouse in the middle of their lives they will never forget. Their life, this one moment, rest of their life. And that just, you get a taste of that power and you want more.
Yeah.
So I became obsessed with social dynamics. I became obsessed with magic. And while I'm in California, and I'm also pushing all of the things that I was told about religion and truth, and I was challenging it, because the American way of thinking of Christianity was certainly not the truth. And the experiences that I had to figure out for myself what that is, or I risk running into another instance where I'm unprepared because I wasn't paying attention. And being in a situation with a woman where you want to kill yourself is like, why? Why was I ever there? Because I didn't take the time to learn. So when I moved to San Francisco, it all kind of culminated, and I had, my company was doing well, and I understood who I was and what I wanted, and I got a lot of people who thought I was really proud. I was compared to Donald Trump and all this other stuff, mostly because I told women no, which is something they hate to hear, because they rarely get a guy who's just like, no, this is what I'm doing. I mean, you can leave if you want, and especially if they're attractive. They don't hear that very often, but they like it, So went on 200 dates that first month. I had 5 stalkers, and got involved with 2 girls who were in sex cults. Those are stories. But with COVID and everything, had 2 shootings outside of my apartment within a month. I was assaulted by homeless people, and I called the cops on 2 people who were breaking into a car in broad daylight. And the cops said that if they came over, they'd have to arrest me for putting myself in danger.
Oh.
Because the homeless people have rights. And with COVID, everybody left San Francisco, and that was the first time I've ever seen Lombard Street empty, absolutely empty, probably since it was built. That little, zigzaggy street in San Francisco. Dead. Completely dead. You go down and past the original Wells Fargo building, downtown San Francisco. You have to walk in the streets because the sidewalks on both sides are lined for miles with tents. So it looked like a third world country, or worse. It was a complete disaster. And, of course, the rent was also a disaster. So I ended up taking a contract to fly cell towers for T-Mobile and AT&T for their national 5G upgrade. I would say this was 6 months after COVID started, so end of 2020. Yeah, end of 2020. I hit 17 states in 6 months. The longest I was in one city was a week. I had my car blow up. My engine blew up in Moab, Utah, on my way from North Dakota down to Arizona. And if you're familiar with Utah, Moab is the last spot before it's like 4 hours to Arizona. There's nothing, and my Subaru just went kaput right in Moab. So I rented a U-Haul truck for $1,000 a week and lived in that while I was traveling to, climbing up buildings and flying drones, and ended up flying to Texas, and then going with one of my partners, my mentor who taught me the ropes, showed me the ropes. We ended up going up to Michigan and a whole bunch of other spots on the way up to inspect some towers up there. I ended up getting a truck, and then ended up going back to Michigan. So we went back and forth a couple times. Ended up going back to Michigan by myself, and while I was there, I was in Traverse City, which is on the other side of the mitten over here, for one day. And this was New Year's Eve. And it was snowing, and Traverse City looks like a Hallmark movie, like the setting for a Hallmark movie. And it was snowing, and I couldn't fly anyway because, weather and drones don't mix. And I updated my Hinge profile. At that point, after everything that happened in San Francisco, and the dating fiasco with stalkers, that I don't know if you've ever had a stalker, but it will take away your sense of security in a way that eats the thought that this person could be literally anywhere, and probably is, and is dangerous, makes everywhere dangerous. and makes there's no security, no safety in that scenario. And I had this moment where I'm on the road and I go on a date with this girl to not have to pay for a hotel. 'Cause I can, I can just go into a town and I could, match with somebody or meet with somebody within the day and have a place to stay. And then I actually break that down. I'm like, am I really selling myself out for $100 a night? If I did this professionally, I could make a lot more money. Why am I doing this at all? And I lost the plot on why I was even trying to learn the things that I learned. And so I stopped dating. I swore off of it. I'm like, I don't want to date. I don't want to be toxic. I want to figure out my life. I want to be healthy, and I want to get my company back on track. And that was probably about 6 months. And I had 3 interactions during that trip where I talked to 3 different people in different states that didn't know each other. And they all were asking me about when I was going to get married. I'm like, really? Now? Like, these are people I know, they could ask me it. Why are they all in cahoots? Why is it everybody that I'm meeting up with, why are all my friends trying to get me to get married all of a sudden? This doesn't happen. Like, you know what I'm about. I'm in a different city every week.
Yeah.
Like, if people couldn't keep up with me back then, they sure as hell can't now. How am I going to find a girl? No, I'm not even going to entertain this idea. But after the third one was Matt, actually. I stayed with him over Christmas, and he was in Virginia. And he's like, yeah, you should probably think about and just give it to the Lord, see what he provides, and stop trying to do it yourself. Okay, that's fair. So, all right, I'll just stop trying. And then that's Christmas. So this was New Year's. So this is a week later. I'm in Traverse City, and I can't fly, and it's beautiful. And I update my Hinge profile, and we match immediately. And she told you why, the magic and everything, and the conversation flowed really well. I was very much, this is who I am, this is where I'm going, this is what I want to do, and I'm looking for somebody who's on board with that. Like, I'm not here to play around. I'm not in life to just goof off. I want to go places and do stuff. And she was all for that and checked off boxes I didn't even know I had. And was it over 100 miles away? You were 100 miles away? At least 100 miles away.
I had my settings, because you can customize your settings of where you want to match with people. So anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, within a certain distance, etc. And I had mine set to within 100 miles, and Traverse City was within 70 miles of where I was.
Nice.
Yeah. So the next day I was in St. Ignace. The following day I was in Ohio. The next day I was in Virginia. And then the next day I was in Chicago. So 4 days later I was in Chicago after hitting those other states. And that's how we met. And we're FaceTiming at that point, and Daniel, my friend, he leans over and asks her if she's coming to the party, which I hadn't even considered, asking her, because we hadn't met, and because it's 7 hours, and because that's a lot of responsibility. What if it goes south? I wouldn't even. It's crazy. And she did.
I hesitated.
She did. She did.
I hesitated, and I thought about it for a few hours first before I said yes. But I said yes.
And that was interesting, because when she said yes, and I knew that she was driving that far, it made me more responsible for her experience. Because if it doesn't go well, you can't just leave.
Right. It's not like driving 20 minutes down the the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's really no safety net here. Like, well, you know what? We've been talking this long, and it's not like I'm probably too transparent about who I am and what I'm about. So cool. And in social dynamics, you have to calibrate yourself to your social environment. And you have to recalibrate every once in a while. And when you calibrate, you get a good sense for people, really good sense, like mind reading. Good. You've explored all of we call it multiple threading, where you have a conversation, then you attach things to that conversation while you're talking, so you can always go back and you can always have something to pull on. And I just confused myself. Sorry. You explore all the different threads of your conversations piece. Like, this is my granddad's jacket. This is my family crest. And people will comment on the ring. And I've explored all of the different threads that could come off of this ring. I've explored all the different threads that can come off of this ring. I can even do interesting things with it. And so that's how you calibrate with people. You calibrate socially by knowing all of the threads that are coming off of the things that you can talk about, so that you have a lot more time in conversation to be able to navigate the conversation and see things, observe things, pick things up that other people aren't picking up. You can do cold reads. You can learn a lot about people. I'm sure you're really good at this, actually, with podcasting. You get a lot of deep information about people that you can start to look at people, and you can tell what their lifestyle's like, what their pain points are, what they enjoy, based on, if they based on how they look, based on their weight, based on their, you can tell if somebody loves the gym or not right off the bat, right? But you can go deeper than that too. Mm-hmm. And so we calibrated really well right off the bat, which her driving 7 hours threw off all of my techniques. So, like, I don't know what to do if this doesn't work. Well, let's just try it. And she opens the door, and I knew, just based on the investment alone that she'd put into the drive, that I could kiss her as soon as she opened the door. And but now I might have under any other circumstance, but considering she just drove 7 hours, knowing that I could do that, the question was when, right?
Yep.
And that was probably like, that's when I started to learn finesse. That I could, but I shouldn't, because I wanted it to be special. So we waited for that moment when we're outside and it's dark and the snow's covering everything, and there's music in the background and the pool table, and we're just out, in this Chicago snow, just talking about life, and that was the moment. And it was a beautiful moment. And the next 2 days we did London House, and then I went back to California. And ended up coming back and went to her house. Have you seen the Thomas Kincaid paintings?
Yeah.
The cottages?
Yeah.
This was a Thomas Kincaid cottage.
Huh.
In the middle of the woods, with a little smokestack, with the little it's wood burning stove. It's made of cobblestone. It was beautiful. Is beautiful. And I just knew. I'm on the phone with my boss when we're at the London house, which was 2 days later, or the next day actually, and he's asking what I'm doing. And while I know that I have autonomy and I can do whatever I want, you still have to kind of, explain certain things. Why am I not flying? And who is this that I'm hanging out with?
Yeah.
So I can't really just say that, oh, I'm not doing my job because I met this girl yesterday and we're hanging out in Chicago. How do you... yeah, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend. And she's like...
I found out that we were official from that phone call. And I just go looking around. I'm like, hello? Did anyone else just hear that? It was such a bizarre moment. But
It was.
it was great because it happened to be my parents' anniversary.
Mm.
Yeah, January 11th.
Wedding anniversary, yes.
My birthday's the 9th, and that was on the 11th.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 2 days.
Another one of those divine providence things.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that it's no matter how much technique and skill and tools that you have to get a certain result, 99% of the time it might work. But this was so out of left field and so different in how it was orchestrated that besides smooth talking and just, well, even that, like I can't really think of a legitimate scenario where that would work on my own merit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could have got her to drive 7 hours just on my own, but what about the other stuff? What about the why would you drive 7 hours to meet somebody, you know? So the why behind that, I think, was really what made us realize that this was way different than anything else we've ever experienced, as far as, you know, a relationship. And I don't know how many hundreds of people I've interacted with on a like a dating type level, not just like we've probably met thousands just over time, just people you interact with, but on an intimate level, right? And this was way out of left field, is way different. There were all these people telling us like, hey, maybe we should start looking into this. She just updates her profile. I update my profile all at the same time. She drives 7 hours to meet me. I'm pretty much just right off the bat say this is what we're doing. And we both knew what we wanted, that when we kind of we're just careening through this planet through time, and we just run right into each other and stick like one of those Velcro balls on the little mitt things.
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
You know, it just sticks. And it's not like my lifestyle changed at all. It's just she's like, I want purpose, and I'm like, I need help. You know? and so she joined the company because she had to. So she joined the company, and she came in as the facilitations director, and she got the first contract was a DARPA contract for the Racer program, building swarm drones for an autonomous ATV as Overwatch, and also as a munition. And she hops on. I've been fighting with organizations and people to make my website. I don't know why it's so hard to find people who can do a website correctly. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a professional website builder and you send me back a website where all the white words are bleeding into the white background and the black words are bleeding into the black background, I'm not going to even talk back to you because you can't do the basics right. Yeah. You're supposed to be a professional website designer. That's clearly not functional. Why would you give me that shit? You know, and I fired like 5 companies before she came along, and she, we're going to a drone conference, the Commercial UAV Expo in Vegas, and she makes the website in 2 days. Like, they exist. Not bitter at all.
No.
Was it is CPAs and website designers. I don't know what it is with that.
I also connected you
She
with
did.
the CPA.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, Jerry's awesome. And got us the ACC contract. So, like, so many things that they just don't make a lot of sense, like, on paper.
Yeah.
But they make enough sense to go past all the walls and the barriers and the strategy and all these other things that we confuse for wisdom, to where there's nothing left but that. There's nothing to distract us but that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is the actual thing. This is what this is who we're meant to be with, to find our purpose together. And it hasn't been easy, but who else can you travel back and forth between Michigan and California in a truck and be homeless and be sold out to your purpose and to building something that matters? To, like, battalion swarming drones are the future of the sky. They're the future of warfare. They're the future of travel. They're the future of delivery. And she's like, yeah, I want to do that too. And so everything that we faced, and we bought a camper van in LA, which was a Lemon that broke down in Big Sur.
I don't think you're doing it justice.
Okay, so I will pass this off.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to own a VW van. It's been a bucket list item for a very long time, and I had remember the stimulus
Yeah.
checks.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. So I had a lot of that stimulus money hanging out. In
Wish I got some of that.
Yeah, in a bank account, and I was looking on Craigslist for. I think we were looking for campers in general, and I found a 1978 VW. I still have pictures of it if you want to see it. Is like pea green, so 70s.
Classic.
And it was $10,000. And I was like, I have $10,000. Oh, so I contacted the guy and I was like, so do you take cash or check or what's going on there? And I think I talked him down a little bit, actually. And we went out to see it, and we got a guy, Pete Hawley, who was on the contract with David at the time with
Sharper
Bead.
Bead. Yeah, bird's eye aerial drones.
And we got him to check it out with us, and he was like, this is good to go, this is awesome. And he obviously was not very mechanically inclined. Like, he just knew the superficial things about it. This looks good, the engine looks good, the undercarriage looks good, etc. But what we didn't know was that they made it appear as though it was a good car.
They spray painted over everything.
Yeah, they basically more or less spray painted things to make it look like it was feasible as a vehicle. And we had to couch that for a little bit because we were long distance for a little while he was doing California stuff and I was still in Michigan, and we were making it work. And so the plan was for me to go out to California and for us to start living the van life. And we had to go back and pick it up. And when we did, we went from, I can't remember if it was somewhere in Southern California, and we drove it up north. And
Camarillo?
No, that was 2022.
Okay.
That was a different thing. Anyway, it was somewhere in Southern California, and we had to take it all the way back up north. I'm sure this was work related. And we got to drive the entire way on the PCH, which I don't think that anyone has lived unless they've been in a VW van on the PCH in California. And like he said, we ended up in Big Sur at one point.
Before that, we're like, to get up Big Sur, it's this huge mountain, and this thing is old, and it can maybe go 40 miles an hour. And there's
That's
like
so
this
cute.
line of traffic behind us, and nobody's honking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Except for when they eventually pass us, when they know that it's safe, and they go like, "Good job, buddy. Keep it up." Everybody was supportive. It's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, so we ended up in Big Sur, and it was like the only place that we could. We held off on getting gas until then, which was a big
Oh.
mistake. And we stopped at one gas station right before then, and it was like $5 or $6 a
Yeah,
gallon.
it was $6.30 a gallon. And I was like, hell no. Now this
Yeah.
is before everything turned to like $6 normally across the state, so that was unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like $6.30 a gallon?
That's
Hell
insane.
no.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll wait for the next one.
Oh, big mistake. Because when we got to Big Sur, it was $7 a gallon or more. And we ended up spending like $500 on gas between the truck and the van.
And
Yeah.
it blew a gasket when we got to that gas station.
Literally blew a gasket. Head gasket was just obliterated going up that mountain. And an even more interesting part of the story is when we parked over a storm drain. We parked on top of a storm drain, and it was leaking. Was it gasoline or oil? I can't remember if it was
Oil.
gas. It was leaking oil into the storm drain, and somebody happened to be walking. This is in Monterey, by the way. We ended up in Monterey.
We just rode gravity all the way down to Monterey,
Mm-hmm.
and we were fighting at that point. We were tired. This was through the night that we drove, so we get there in the morning as the sun's coming up, and we just park. I park the van. She parks the truck behind me, and then I leave to go get coffee to Starbucks, and then she calls me, and she on like I'm gone a minute maybe, and I'm just around the corner, and she's like, hey, something happened, you need to come back. I'm like, what could pop? Seriously, we can't get anything to work right. So I come back, and there's like 2 fire trucks and 3 cops surrounding our vehicles.
Mm.
I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Somebody called the fire department
Mm.
because of the oil in the storm drain. And so they show up, and they're like, you know that you could kill the entire city of Monterey like that, because once it comes into contact with the sewage.
Like it goes out into the water, and because it's a water town or city, if for whatever reason it's like it's all empty underneath there, whatever, so it could come into contact with like an electric spark and it'll blow up the city.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Louise.
I don't
Yeah.
know the details on that, but yeah, they take that
Catastrophe,
seriously.
though.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
Yeah.
very seriously.
Yeah, so they proceeded to inform us that the vehicle needed to be, we needed to get rid of it, and we needed to get rid of it fast
Yeah.
to someone who knows how to take care of it, because clearly we had no idea how to maintain a 1978 VW
Nor
van.
the resources or
Nor the
time or anything.
resources.
Yeah.
So we ended up selling it to a lady who was, so her dad owned the shop, and she'd always wanted a VW van, and she knew exactly how to take care of it. She'd worked on 1,000 of them before. So I ended up selling it to her for like $200.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whew.
So that was a lot of California. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how smooth of a transition this would be, but at what point in your guys' story did magic really start to become a part of this adventure?
Well, obviously getting her in the first place, it helped a lot. But what we wanted to do was I wanted to have a stage show, and our vision was to take the van and do a traveling show where she sings, plays instruments, and I perform. And those dreams were dashed pretty quickly when, the bug turned
Yeah.
into a almost bomb.
Yep.
So how do I put this? it kind of served its purpose. The magic and the pickup, or magic and the social dynamics served their purpose. And I had a major identity crisis around it that lasted for several years, and I'm still wrestling with, but I found the purpose in it again. That it's a really valuable and awesome skill set, but for what I was trying to do with it, and a lot of things happen that way where you do it because of one reason or another. Let's say you get into the gym because you have a bad breakup. Well, you don't stay there. And doing things for girls is a very shallow but also very, very small window of time within a person's life where that's relevant. And it's really important, but once you succeed, it completely upends all of those reasons why you got there in the first place. So the next level is finding purpose within that skill set that you can use for the rest of your life or for that next step, because things grow in stages. And in magic, you start off as the apprentice, where you want to get it for the, you want to get in for the, for the ability to control a crowd or to get a girl or whatever it is, because it's really fun, because you want to do stage shows. And that lasts for a very short amount of time, and then it has to evolve. You have to find purpose in the gym outside of just looking hot for women. You find purpose in the gym for health. You find it for your peace.
Yeah.
You go to the gym for therapy, to have a long life, for longevity, for health reasons. And once you get beyond that initial motivation, you see what it is you got involved with for what it really is and what it really has to offer. And with magic, it was a lot more brutal than trying to recover from recover a different focus in the gym, because it's so visceral. And I've done this where I would do an impromptu show for a couple hundred people just because I could, because I was doing it so often. Everywhere I went, I go to the hotel and perform for the night clerk, and then by the time you wake up the next day, they've told everybody on the shift. And so they start asking, it's like, oh, are you the redhead magician that they said came in last night? I got that one a lot.
Yeah.
And so that, they tell everybody too. So there was one hotel I was at, there was a conference going on there, 200 people there. And by the time night rolled around from the next day, it came in at night, the whole day, by that time night came around, everybody knew who I was. And there's this conference with all these business people. And one of the waitresses came up to me and said, "Hey, are you the redheaded magician?" And of course, the tables next to me are like, "Huh?
Huh? What?
Huh?
Who? Where?"
I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So I did a stage show right then and there with 200 people. I've done birthday parties, weddings, all kinds of stuff like that, just impromptu. And I'll tell you where that switch happened was when I was in England. I did a birthday party. I did a show for a birthday party for one of the executives at the company, Intelligent Energy, and she invited me to the birthday party, introduced me to everybody, and I go into this pub, this old English pub, like you've seen pictures, stone, and and I go in and it's like packed out the door, and I'm like, all right, where's my people, Well, all of them. The entire place was packed out, and they were all there for her husband's birthday. How do you have so many friends? First of all, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But half of them or more were all former military, decorated from wars I've never heard of. And these are not the kinds of people you can trick.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to be entertained, right?
Yep.
So I'm going from table to table, and I used to have these thumbs that had lights on them, and I toss them back and forth. They're great for for clubs because there's so much noise, but lights, work really well.
Yep.
And they're really fun to juggle.
You still have the thumb.
It broke.
Oh,
It's yeah, I used it too much. And
right.
although that would be,
Hmm.
it could have
I
hid,
thought
hidden.
about that actually. I was like,
Damn
maybe you should just wear his fake thumb.
I should have worn my fake thumb. Ah,
Dang it.
missed opportunity.
Oh,
Well, the fake thumb had a much bigger purpose than I could have ever imagined, because one of those gentlemen, and mind you, let me set the picture. These guys knew each other for decades. They were in wars together, and that's like when you're young, when you're 20s, and these guys known each other for decades. And this one guy was missing his finger; it got shot off, and I think it was his ring finger, like this one, so it's like that. And I'm at this table. There's like 4 people over here and 5 people over here, and I'm every table breaks down into a set, and the set could, if there's 3 people, it's going to be a 2 and a 1. If there's 4 people, it's going to be a 2 and a 2, and then they interchange, or they exchange constantly on the dynamics of the set. So this set broke in half, and so this half was talking to themselves over here while I was over here, so I could turn my back and they wouldn't see what I'm doing, so that I could recreate it on the other side.
Okay.
That way I can just, not have to do different things for different people and get confused on what I'm doing. And so there's a lady sitting next to me on my left, and her husband is sitting right across from me. And he's the one that's missing his finger.
Okay.
And she's not paying attention. So while I'm doing the thumb thing, his eyes light up. And he reaches across the table and he snatches the thumb right off of my finger. And he puts it on his nub, puts it over top of it. And he taps his wife, says, "Hey, he made my finger grow back." She didn't see anything that was going on. So imagine you're married to somebody for decades, and this kid shows up out of nowhere, and suddenly his finger's back after decades of this. And she just was silent, and then she shrieked. She freaked out. Everybody else is like, "What's going on?" And he stands up. He says, "He made my finger grow back." And the place went wild. And I should have left. I will never be able to recreate that moment.
Yeah.
Ever. And it had nothing to do with me. I was just a facilitator for what we call real magic. That is real magic. And that is what we're chasing to this day.
David is actually, we've discussed this many, many times, is he has this skill,
Oh, sure.
and
Tell me when.
the skill is very valuable to a lot of people, and he obviously
Thanks.
enjoys doing it for various reasons. And the way he was using it before was obviously not going to be applicable anymore now that he's, permanently attached, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we should just take advantage of it. And that's how the Real Magic Show came to be. We just decided that we don't care so much about the form that it's going to take, as long as it's a responsible one, and it's just sharing that gift with people and bringing joy where there isn't any, like you were talking about how you want to impact people's lives in that way, at their darkest moments. And David is, mimicked that same exact thought. Like, I want to be impactful in someone's life who doesn't necessarily enjoy their life, and maybe I can be that, that catalyst by which they pivot and they change their lives, So it was just more or less one of those moments where it didn't want to waste the gift anymore. So we put together a magic show and just recently performed live at Austin Community College. We used to work at Alpena Community College. So
They're
I get
both
them.
ACC.
ACC,
Gotcha.
yeah. So We just did that on April 5th, and it went off without a hitch. I was stage director, and we got a ton of really great media, and Coco was a part of the show, and
Aw.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Coco's, what did we call it?
Coco's Magic Show.
Coco's Magic Show.
Coco's Magic Show. We even
She's
bought
good.
her a dress.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're training her to do tricks and, be able to reveal people's cards and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Inspired by Piff the Magic Dragon.
Have you heard of Piff the Magic Dragon?
Uh-uh.
Oh, he's awesome. You gotta look him up. He's
Okay.
he's a magic dragon, right? So he's dressed up in a dragon suit, and he does magic, and he's in Vegas, and he's just so irreverent with how he interacts with the crowd. And he was on America's Got Talent, and he bills himself as the magician that failed America's Got Talent.
Mm.
So that tells you about his sense of humor. We've taken a lot of stuff we've borrowed a lot of ideas from his shows, because he has a way of connecting with people on a deeper level while still being ridiculously funny.
Hmm.
And I really like that mix of skill and humor, rather than one overshadowing the other because of a deficiency in one. He's great at both. And I like how he blends those together. I think he's phenomenal at that.
That's awesome.
He also has the world's only magic performing chihuahua, Mr. Piffles. So that's where we got the inspiration for Coco to be in the show. And we never got to perform the trick because of technical difficulties, but we wanted to integrate that. So we ended up doing a trick montage where Coco was doing some of her tricks in like the intermission part of the show, and I think she handled herself pretty well.
I was just gonna say, how'd she do?
She did really well. Yeah,
She
I
did
was
great.
very proud of
Coco.
her. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it on camera though because of some equipment failures, but
Sure.
I could recreate it.
Well, for our next show, we will.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
It's funny to think that she was a part of the act as I've watched her for the last 45 minutes, hanging across your legs, looking like she's not even alive. I'm just like, she is max comfort right now.
This is
Yep.
normal.
yeah, until she gets snacks,
Yeah.
and then she's
Squirrels.
shark eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get into this last portion, I want to give you guys a huge thank you so much. This has been such a freaking fun episode. You guys are great storytellers. I have been just sitting here enjoying myself the entire time, and you've made my Friday night. You've been so genuine and transparent with just everything that you've weaved and woven through, and even right from the get-go, out of the gate, talking about your experiences with your family, with your first marriage. Like, I just can't tell you guys enough how grateful I am that you would show up to my home and just share everything that you have shared tonight. So just know that I'm incredibly grateful for your time, your generosity, and this has been a real treat for me. The episode will come out in about 2.5 weeks, and I can't wait to share it with the audience and just see what they think as well. So a million times, thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Of
We're
course.
grateful that
It's
you
been-
had us.
Yeah, it's been amazing, just incredible, and it's been so fun.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a good time.
Yeah.
I know I think I asked Annie, David, I may have forgot to ask you, have you done an in-person podcast before where you got to go to a studio of sorts and hang out for a bit?
No. All of mine were online, or over the phone, or on Zoom.
Yeah.
I've done quite a few that way, but never in a studio.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a million times more fun when you're
Yeah.
on site together, and yeah, it's 10 times better, I
It's
think.
you get to really open up a lot more than you can on when you're you don't get as much of the body connection, the body language
Yeah.
connection, so you can't really open up as much when you're just looking at a camera or looking at a computer, and and somebody's just reading from a script, or you can't really have a genuine connection that way, I don't think.
Yeah, you get to share some drinks, share some zins, and all joking aside, though, there is just something about, to your point, I think it's the body language thing.
Yeah.
You just can't get what we've created tonight when you're looking at a screen and you're only seeing from the top of the chest up. You know, it doesn't. It's two different worlds.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, thanks for having us.
This is my first time telling my story to anyone beside David, I think. Honestly.
This is your first podcast.
This is my first podcast and the first time I've ever really told my story.
Well, thank you for telling it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That's good. I've learned a lot.
Oh, thank you.
All right, we should just do this for a relationship, you know?
That's actually a good idea. We should.
Not a bad idea.
No, we should consider that.
Yeah.
You can come back once a month, and I will just sit here and provide non-alcoholic wine, and you two can chat.
That's not a bad plan.
That isn't a bad plan.
Talk about the past, talk about the future.
Yeah. All right.
So
now we're going to do some magic. You're going
Let's
to
do
do
it.
some magic.
yeah, and you might.
I might.
Yes. So
Really?
the whole premise is that it's not about me, and when I make magic about me, it doesn't go too well, because it's an experience that that is unlike anything else. Where if you're cooking, you get to experience the cooking you made. And if you're making music, you can experience the music you made. I guess when you're editing movies, or you edit it so many times, but then you can see the product afterwards. The first time you get to experience what everybody else is going to experience when they see it the first time. So my goal, I don't know how well I can do with the thumb, but my goal is to see how well you can connect with the material, and if I can pull real magic out of you.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got this penny here. If you hold out your hand like this, right, I'll place the penny on top of your hand there. And let's see. No, maybe it's like that. And it just, I don't know how that happens.
You didn't even touch it.
Nope. Did you feel it?
No. I mean, I felt it on the palm of my hand, and I felt it slightly lift off. I felt when it left, when it's gone, but
Yeah. That's the best part. I can't get this other one because of the thumb. But nothing up the sleeves, That's the crazy part. So, one of the things I've been getting into a lot, I should probably stay near this. One of the things I've been getting into a lot is technology, because I think technology can do a lot for us that we can't do ourselves. We can do a lot with technology that we are incapable of, if that makes sense. So, a lot of, like, paying online is crazy, that you can just transfer money anywhere in the world at the snap of a finger, and you can talk to somebody on the other side of the planet in real time, which I think is pretty crazy. So the phone here, we've got a couple apps. I actually get my wallet there, and go ahead and tap the app right there. A lot of people, they pay with their phone nowadays, right? So they store their card on their phone, and the way that I store the card on my phone, can you see this? I don't know what the angles are on the camera, but the way that I store the card on my phone is like that.
Huh.
So makes it a lot easier to make payments that way. And it's really fun when you're when the waiter comes up to the table and I'm like, hey, do you take PayPal? Like, no, I don't take PayPal. Well, can I pay with my phone? Like, yeah, you can pay with your phone. And I just pull it out of my phone, and without telling them anything, because a lot of magic is the element of surprise. I've realized that that's the best moments for people is when they don't know, and that's when it feels real to them. And the looks on their face when they're just like, what? Because they don't know how to process that.
Right.
And I love those moments because I know that that's going to be a moment they'll never forget.
Yeah.
And I think that's, what it's really all about. And we were talking a little bit before about my philosophy around magic, and I want to get as close to the real thing as possible. In my mind, magic is what we as humans think of as abilities we wish we could have. Real magic would be an ability that we wish we can have. So the closest that we get as humans to magic is superheroes. Mm-hmm. And anything a superhero can do is the collective mind of humanity trying to come up with, what magic would be to them. So being able to teleport, being able to fly without wings or without an airplane. That is the essence of what I'm trying to create, is that connection to the abilities that we really wish that we had to be able to control minds or read minds, stuff like that. Well, when you are able to do stuff that's close to that, like hyper-observance is very close to mind reading. What do you do with that once you have that information? Nobody ever says what you do with that ability. So I think a lot of the powers that we think of as things that we want is what we really want out of magic, and I'm a purist in the sense that's what I'm looking for. But I did bring my deck of cards because what I'm really trying to get out of you is to see, have you ever thought about what it'd be like to be a magician? Or
I mean, when I was a kid, I would imagine myself like being a wizard, being able to like shoot fireballs out of my hands at bad guys or stuff like that. So a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to find out how well you connect with, with what we've been talking about. I'm going to try to make you the magician.
Okay.
Okay. But first, can we have the little table right here? Okay. It takes some time to really kind of gauge who you are. It should be a lot less time now that we know each other.
Yes.
But I like to start with a game. Everybody loves games. When I was in the Philippines, I had like 18-hour days. I never did tell you that story about that, but one of my favorite moments was after working a really long day in the Philippines and playing with my Philippine airmen partners and some of the other Marines and soldiers that were Air Force guys out there. At the end of it, we're all just beyond tired, the slap happy tired, and then we have to do that again. Wake up really early the next morning and do it all over again. We would still every night we would go out and we would play rummy or euchre. So we'd play rummy or euchre. Have you ever played any of those games?
Love rummy. Yeah.
Okay.
Grew up on it.
Good. Yeah. Fantastic game. But this is not like that game. This is a game called Pick 10. And the way that it works is you're going to grab a stack of cards right off the top, and you're just going to place it on the table like that. You're trying to guess. You're not like counting them or anything. You just grab a stack and just place it on the table.
Close to 10.
Yeah, just guesstimate. Does that feel like 10 cards?
I think it's a little more, but
Okay. Let's move that into the middle.
right on top.
No, just right here is fine. Just that way they're organized and stuff. Let's grab another one. How's that one feel?
It feels almost identical to the first one.
All right, let's place it down, and we'll do one more. All right, how's that one look?
This one's a little less.
A little
I think
less?
This could be probably less than 10, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So if each of these is 10, how many is that?
40.
Do you know how many cards are in a deck?
52.
Yes. So how many's left? Sweet. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So close,
Mm-hmm.
but no cigar. That's the game.
Okay.
Wait, you don't see him. Okay.
I know we're 5 off.
Okay, we're 5 off.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. Let's fix this.
Okay.
All right. If I could do magic, what was the name of the game?
Pick 10.
Pick 10. Oh, I might not be able to with this thumb. Did you see it?
Mm-mm.
It happened. There's 10.
10 of diamonds. 10 of hearts.
You want to do the rest?
Sure. 10 of clubs. 10 of spades. No way.
You pick 10.
That's so cool.
So
That's
that's
crazy. I picked them.
you did. You
I
did.
picked them. You didn't do anything.
It's the best part. So it seems like you have a pretty good connection here with them.
Clearly.
So I have to do a pharaoh shuffle.
You could have me shuffle too.
Here you go. The one thing I can't do, I guess,
Shuffling.
shuffling. I didn't learn the bridge until about 5 years ago. I didn't know how to shuffle until about 5 years ago.
I still don't know how to shuffle. It makes me
Okay.
feel better.
Okay.
I played a lot of cards growing up, so at minimum I should know how to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you've got a good connection here with the cards?
Yeah.
Are you ready for this one?
No.
Okay, that's fair. I'll walk you through it. It's scarier in no, it's scary. Never mind. The whole thing's it's terrifying. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to find a card that really speaks to me.
No, I'm going to look away.
Okay.
So no one thinks I'm
I like that card. Cool. And now you're going to go through and you're going to find a card. And that'll be your card. Show it to the cameras, show it to Annie, but not to me. All right? And then place it right next to this one. I'm going to turn away.
Showing everyone but you.
Correct.
Any card that speaks to me.
Any card that speaks to you.
Okay. And
You
what
got
do
it?
I do with this card?
Just place it right here on the table next to mine. Perfect. Okay, so this is my card and this is your card. I'll take the deck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my card and I'm going to bury it in the deck. Would you mind shuffling that for me? Okay, perfect. Now, you know what your card is?
Mm-hmm.
Annie knows what your card is.
Mm-hmm.
They know what your card is,
Mm-hmm.
but I do not know what your card is.
Correct.
Cool. Bury it.
Can I shuffle too?
Yeah. Just however you want. You can shuffle, cut, many times as you want. And just let me know when you're done. Wait, I don't need to. Wait, yes I do. No, I don't. That's fine. I can turn around.
Okay.
Okay. It's in the deck?
Yes.
You didn't put it in your pocket?
No.
You didn't eat it?
No.
Be surprised if you aren't very specific about your directions. This is where it gets really interesting. I'm going to find your card.
Okay.
Maybe. So there's black cards and red cards. Black cards and red cards. We got face cards and numbers. Face cards and... Not feeling any of these. It's earlier? I think. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now it's your turn.
To find yours?
Yeah. So remember, you've got the connection, you've got the intuition, and you know enough about me. So trust your gut, and it'll speak to you. I don't know how else to say that. You'll know. These are fun.
Yes, they are.
I will take that. Okay. That's fun. Okay, so this is...
Dad.
Okay, so to recap. I picked a card,
Yes,
and you didn't see it.
correct.
Annie didn't see it, and the camera didn't see it. You picked a card, and everybody saw it, except for me.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that you don't know what I have, and I don't know what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went in, and we picked each other's cards. Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. So, as a magician, it makes sense that I would know what your card is. You don't know how I would know, but you know that I would know if your card was the King of Spades.
Right.
That was your card?
Yes.
How would you know what my card was?
I won it.
You wouldn't, unless I told you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you know what my card was? Do they know what my card is?
Nope.
So, your card was the King of Spades, and my card was, the only way you would know is if I told you.
Mm-hmm.
The card that I had was the Queen of Hearts. So you would have had to pick the Queen of Hearts out of every card in the deck.
Uh-huh.
What card did you pick?
Can I turn it around?
You can.
It's the Queen of Hearts, guys.
Wherever you guys are. I guess you got it.
I got it.
Look at that. So that is you could be
That's my favorite one.
you could be a magician right there.
That's the best.
How'd you? I don't know. I don't want to know how you knew which one mine was.
I've known him for 5 years, and I still don't know how he does that. No idea. No clue.
Well, welcome to the other side of the. Well, you haven't seen how the cake is made, but that's what being a magician's all about.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how you did that. I mean, you had a 1 in 51 chance, basically.
Yeah, true. Which is a lot of options.
There's a couple. Yeah.
So, what do you think?
I love it because I've seen like sleight of hand tricks where maybe you don't know the answer, but you could sort of rationalize like 3 or 4 different ways where maybe they put something up their sleeve, or maybe there's I saw a trick once where I thought maybe they even cut the cards so they were a slightly different size, and that's how he sort of knew like which ones to pull. In this case, I have no idea how you came up with my card, like, because there was no sleight of hand. You know, it was it was either dumb luck or something else. In this case, magic.
Yeah. Well, that'd be I'd have to be lucky, really lucky,
Really lucky.
really lucky.
Yeah.
And we don't work on luck.
No. No, I
We wouldn't
reckon
have
you
a show if we did that.
No.
So, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I can do it with a bum thumb now.
With the
So
bum
that's
thumb.
cool.
How'd you do that again? Cheese grater?
Mandolin.
A mandolin. It was great. Not the, mandolin. The sharp one.
Yeah.
Obviously. If I cut my thumb on a musical instrument. I can. Anyway, I'm cutting carrots the old-fashioned way. And Annie's like, you should use this, and it's got this slicer on the top here, and just cut it like this. And I'm doing that. I'm like, oh, this is so much easier. And she's like, oh, you need this. I need what? And she was about to give me the thing you put on top to not do exactly what I did when I what? And I went too low and took the thumb tip off.
Ouch.
Yeah,
Ouch.
it was brutal. So it was bleeding for a while.
One time when I was as a kid, I was trying to separate these two frozen hamburger patties. And for some reason, 14-year-old David thought it would be a great idea to get a steak knife. And so I'm holding the patties like this with the steak knife like this. And I'm like banging against the counter. And then finally the patties separate and the knife goes into here and cuts the skin all the way down to my bone. And after the initial shock, I look down at it and I can see my bone. And I go, look, Mom, it's my bone. And she turns around to see my hand gushing blood. And I'm just like smiling like, is this cool?
Look, Mom, I almost died. And she didn't know you were doing that?
No, no one knew. Nobody knew except me. Stupid.
Your poor mom. How'd she do with that?
She grabbed her purse and took me to the yard. She said, "Come on, David."
Again. Yeah, that's awesome.
We gotta give our moms props for that.
Oh man,
For
they
crisis management.
go through so much.
Do you guys have any gigs coming up or anything that you'd care to shout out? This will come out in about 2 weeks if that matters at all. Anything coming up in June or July?
We're still looking for a venue to house the show permanently. So
Yeah.
we are in search of a venue at the moment.
We've got quite a few prospects, but they need. Have you heard of the Nudge? Look them up. They're awesome. They send you texts for date ideas, night outs, friends, groups, all kinds of things, and they host events, and they have I think a million followers around the country and 50,000 in Austin alone, and we were looking at at working with them, but they need a place to send one of their ambassadors to, and this has been a mobile show, so I do it wherever. But looking for a stage is interesting. There's so many options in Austin, but there's this one place we found called the Francis Modern Inn, which is it's on what road is that?
I believe it's on Congress.
Okay.
On Congress, and it's nondescript building. You have to go in the back, and it's like speakeasy vibes, which is perfect for something like this. So we're looking at potentially working with them to house it, but we're talking to several different organizations and maybe even churches. But any stages that we can perform on, the more experience we can get, the more people we can share this with, we're all for it. If anybody has a stage or has a venue, or even just a private thing like birthdays or weddings, we do all of that stuff. So, but outside of magic, we also teach a drone course It's how to become a professional pilot. So it's not just Part 107. We don't teach you to get your certificate. We teach you how to go from zero to being a professional in the industry. And it's a precision remote pilot operating system. We teach that. It's all online.
Cool.
And in person. and and we also do a business consulting, because this is my 10th company now. So my personal brand would be my 10th, or our personal brand. So we've made a ton of mistakes. We've realized that is our gold mine, is the mistakes that we've made building companies in a world that likes to tout hustle, and we like to tout quality. So we help people get unstuck from their business ventures and become successful in their what we like to pull out of people is their purpose and their passion. And it is shocking how many people you will talk to, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where you can talk to somebody pretty quickly and you can find out what their gold mine is, what their mountain of value is that they're sitting on. But because they're sitting on it, they don't know that they have it.
Yeah.
It's that thing that they are like. We have a Dungeons and Dragons group that we meet with on Tuesdays.
Heck yeah.
It's awesome. Our DM is amazing. He's phenomenal. He's been doing this for like 15 years, and we met, and we're like, why aren't you doing this for work? Because he's investing in it himself, and he's got all this knowledge, and he's very creative, and to us it's a no-brainer that you should be doing this. It's your purpose, it's your passion, it's your drive, and because a lot of people they see themselves as the environment that they're stuck in. They see themselves as the job that they work at, or the friends that they have, not realizing that. And we've gotten this objection so many times that it's oversaturated. A personal brand is oversaturated. Being, doing a fitness brand is oversaturated, or being a DM is oversaturated. Only because you're talking to that small group of people of like 500 to 700 people that are all interested in the same things. But to me, to us, when we're trying to get into D&D and we're trying to, find more creative outlets for our interests, and D&D is one I've wanted to do for years, but because of my lifestyle, I never was able to get nailed down into a good group. I had a cat that I would he could teleport, so he could go in and out of groups when I'd hop into different people's groups throughout my travels. And it was great because he'd always come in, whatever his state was from the last game, and it'd be completely different from whatever game it was that he was coming into. Yeah. So one time he comes in into a game with like 1 hit point left, and he got electrocuted, so his fur was just standing on end, and he teleports into this game with no health and looking like this wild thing. And he's a sassy cat he's a pseudo dragon based off of the cat from Salem from what was that show? Sabrina. Salem, the talking cat. So that was what his character was based on, and that was a lot of fun. But now we're in this group, and I guess the point of that was there's so many people out there that have passions that they are really good at, things that they really like and they know a lot about, that other people want. Yeah. And that's the thing. Money and business are such a confusing topic to a lot of people, but business is what we do. It's not something you have to build like a company and get a bunch of venture capital money stuffed into it and have a bunch of employees. Business is what we do, and we should get paid for what we love, and people want to pay us for what we love. Like if I wanted to learn how to start a podcast, I could come to you and you could charge me $1,000 to teach me how to set all this up. Yeah. And
you know how to do that. You're passionate about it. You love doing it, and you should get paid to do that. And I think everyone's an entrepreneur. Every single person on the planet is an entrepreneur. We are supercomputers. And we get to this point after high school or college or whatever where we stop learning. We stop pursuing greatness. We stop pursuing that chase that we had when we were kids, when we were like, we want to know how the world works. And we get enough of that to say, okay, I know how the world works. Now I don't need any more. Why? Why do we do that? That we should. Everybody's an entrepreneur, whether you're selling yourself at a hamburger stand to flip burgers, you are selling a service to that organization for minimum wage, but it's still a service that you are performing. Yeah. And if you can do that, then you can sell anything. You can, it's just a mindset shift for people to realize that the thing that they should be making money at is what's right under their butts, the things that they're sitting on and they can't see, but everybody else can.
And that speaks to the point that you made earlier, that sometimes you just can't see yourself for who you really are sometimes, and another person might be able to see. How did you put it?
That someone else can see above and below and to your left and to your right and behind you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the common thread there.
And so that's what we try to do with the with the business consulting, is really pull that out of people so that they can see what find their purpose in life and really excel at this life thing.
Yeah. I'm my buddy Tyler, I'm going to take that last 5 minutes of you guys and just play that for him, because he is one of the best music mixers that I have ever met. And he has just set up this awesome studio, and he's ready to invite bands in to come mix their albums. And he has this crippling fear of going to open mic nights and approaching musicians. And so me and his girlfriend we were able to drag him to one, and he actually approached someone, but it's insane because he spent hours and hours and thousands of dollars into building the studio, and now the only thing holding him back is himself. And I so want to see him get his first client, to your point, and then get that proof for himself that you have the skill set, you have the gold mine. The only thing you need to do is go to a couple of open mics, which there are dozens, if not hundreds, in Austin, and it's just there at your fingertips, and he's holding himself back. And I feel for him, because he's my friend and I want him to succeed, but he just doesn't see that thing in himself that me and others around him know he has.
Right. And that hurts, when you see that. That hurts when you see somebody's real, passion come out, and they're not living up to their greatest moments in life. So that's what it's about.
Excellent. Well, when you guys perform next, I would love to come see one of your shows. So count me in. I hope you find your venue and that we can stay in touch, and maybe in the next couple weeks we can grab some barbecue or something together.
Yes.
That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome. And if you know anybody with the stage or with a party coming up or
I'll keep my ear to
anything
the ground,
like that,
for sure.
Yeah,
that'd
be awesome.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Let's get you out of here so you can enjoy your Friday night. To the audience, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, which I know you did, and I know that David and Annie gave you so much value in so many different ways, please support the podcast. It only takes about 3 minutes of your time, and it costs you no money. Go give the show a 5-star review on Spotify. If you could head over to Apple Podcasts after that and leave a written review about what you think about the podcast in general, what you thought about this episode specifically, that would be amazing. And then subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you guys do those 3 small things for me, I promise I will continue to look for guests all around Austin to bring you guys amazing stories to light your internal fire every Saturday night here on DSNSB. With that being said, guys, stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll see you next Saturday. Bye, everyone.